Okay, alright. That's active and live. That's good. Those levels seem good. I'm just gonna get set up here. That's good. I wonder if I can get... I'm not gonna bother with live chat. But I will leave this window open in case anyone wants to say hi. I might see it. Alright, God, I hope this actually works today. I've been trying to do this stream for quite a while, and it's been proven very difficult for me to do it. I don't know why. I feel a bit cursed with all this, but obviously part of it's my fault. I'm not the most organized and executive functioning person. But okay, guys, I'm gonna talk today about the United Kingdom and what I consider its moral failings. I'm gonna focus on the recent, from last month, this rape gang inquiry report that I think was a really big deal. It didn't really seem to get much attention, and I think it deserves a lot more attention. So I'm going to give it some of my attention and explain to you why I feel like we should care about that kind of thing. I want to start by talking about why I care about stuff like this. And when I say stuff like this, I'm talking about sex crime and the injustice of it and abuse in general, but sexual abuse in particular. This is my actual website, and if I was a little more organized, this is what my YouTube thumbnails would look like when I was doing my podcast regularly. This is how I made my podcast thumbnails. And right here is one called Sex Crime. In this podcast from 2020, I talk about why Irreversible is the most traumatic film I've ever seen. I recommend that movie if you have the stomach and fortitude to handle it. It's about sex crime. It's about a rape. And it's about a single rape and how terrible and terrifying it is. And I think that's important to understand, how just one single event can be this awful. And I think, yeah, I just have a lot to say about that kind of thing. I talk about the Me Too movement, Harvey Weinstein, who I think is basically an evil man who created a system that in which he could exploit young, attractive women for his own benefit. That case was kind of interesting because in relation to what I'm going to talk about, one could argue that at least there was some trade involved there. There was something in it. There was something that was in it for the women involved. Like, they wanted fame and they wanted roles in movies, critically acclaimed movies at that. So he was trading on their desire for that, and he was taking his desire from them in return. So that at the very least there was like a system of interplay there. It wasn't pure unalloyed exploitation, though I do agree it was exploitative, and he went to trial for that reason. A lot of that was to do with his position of power, right? And we think about terms of power often nowadays, punching up and punching down, but also just like operating from a position of power to take advantage of somebody versus being on a level playing field. And that's kind of interesting. I feel like it's obvious, and it's also overstated in many circles, this importance of power dynamics. Power dynamics are real. We all know that. They're real everywhere. It's not just in terms of a student and a teacher. Between two students, there's power dynamics. Between two teachers, there's power. I mean, there's always dynamics, right? And power is a very kind of ambiguous, amorphous idea. It's not readily visible all the time. There are people in positions of power who do not actually wield power. So it's a very complicated thing that we can get into with the Rape Gang Inquiry Report as well. In this past podcast, I talk about maturity and agency and how we kind of wield those things when we have positions of power. When we're within these positions, how do we act responsibly? And the burden of male sexuality versus our higher ideals. I think about this a lot because I am a red-blooded man myself, and there's actually an aspect of competition and sportsmanship involved with these judgments. Like, for instance, with Harvey Weinstein, I'm not his peer. I'm not his what's the word for a peer within your time, within your era? His there's a word for that. I wasn't living as an adult man during his heyday, right? But if I was somebody like, I don't know, Brad Pitt or something, or maybe just, a lesser known producer but more attractive and charming on his own, this is my competition for female attention. I'm competing against Harvey Weinstein. I'm also trying to compete with him in terms of developing films and producing films, but I might also be competing with him in the dating world, right? And when somebody cheats that system that we have in place, I'm referring to a real system that we do have in place in the US, in the West, broadly speaking. The rules do change based on which country and which part of the country and which town and everything else. Everything has nuance. And I learned that moving to Berlin, and how different it was to date in Berlin, and how the things that women said differed to the things that women say in New York, for instance. And there's a lot of sophistication involved with these kind of dances, right? But all that said, a rapist is somebody that is not playing by the rules laid out by our society. And just like if I'm playing a game that I care about and somebody cheats within that game, I care that they cheated. I think that's abhorrent behavior worthy of punishment. It's a scandal, right? The 2017 Houston Astros cheating the Los Angeles Dodgers out of a World Series. Why do I care about that? Because I care about this game being played, and I feel like my team was robbed of a championship that they deserved, and they lost it because another team was not playing by the rules. And similarly, when I watch, Surviving R. Kelly or the Jeffrey Epstein documentary, Filthy Rich, on Netflix, like, I'm thinking about stuff like that. Like, Jeffrey Epstein is abhorrent because he has set up a system, a rather corrupted, unfair system, to exploit the kind of women, probably not the exact kind of women, but let's just say for the sake of it, the kind of women that other men might be pursuing. And he's using all of his advantages, like money, but also manipulation tactics, to gain access to such women. And that's bad, right? I think all of us think that is bad. And I'm just trying to lay out for you that I take it very seriously, because I'm a single man still, somehow, and I am still out there trying to get the attention of certain women. And I might not be the most desirable man, given everything, but I'm out there a bit, competing a bit. I could be out there a lot more. But I abhor any man that's taking advantages that are deemed unfair or unsportsmanlike or immoral or criminal. Whenever a man takes those kind of advantages, it really, really angers me as a man. Now, there are men my age with children even of sexual maturity, in which case my my feelings would be the same, but they would be coming from somewhere slightly different. It would be less a competition and more a sense of protection for our daughters, right? And I'm in touch with that as well. I think that corrupting innocence is abhorrent and evil. And there are grades to this, right? It scales differently. So corrupting a 17-year-old is different than corrupting a 10-year-old, which is different than corrupting a 3-year-old. And so all those are different. And in this podcast, which I can recommend to you if you want to go check it out, I'm comparing, Michael Jackson to R. Kelly to Jeffrey Epstein. And like all three of these men are committing sex crimes, but their actions vary, and our moral intuitions are so complex and nuanced that we judge each person differently, right? I also talk about age of consent, physical maturity, mental illness, trauma, codes of conduct. Systemic conspiracies might be worse than specific sex crimes. So yeah, when you take a situation like the movie Irreversible and you systematize it to do that over and over and over again, thousands and thousands of times, that's obviously thousands of times worse than the one instance, right? It's that same trauma repeated over and over. So like, why would you not be absolutely outraged by that? The movie Spotlight kind of goes into this. That's the movie set in Boston from several years back that profiles the journalism work done to uncover the scandals of the Catholic Church, specifically moving their priests around the world whenever those priests were caught in some sort of sexual scandal, namely abusing altar boys. These are pedophilic priests who are engaging in various sex acts with these young boys. And that was terrible. And the movie is interesting and good, right? So all this to say, like, if you agree with what I'm saying, if you think that violent rape in the streets of Paris is bad, like in Irreversible, if you agree that the systemic raping of altar boys by priests is bad, then I think you should care about the rape gang scandals in the UK, because we're talking about something on that level, and I'm going to argue 100 times worse than those things. This is like the worst. This is as bad as it gets, in my opinion. And it's interesting because like I've cared about this for a long time. I moved to Berlin in 2014, and this case here, the Rotherham scandal, this came to light in 2015 or so, 2014, right when I arrived in Berlin, and I was becoming more like red-pilled, which is to say more drawn to the intellectual dark web and alternative perspectives on the beginnings of the woke agenda unfolding. I got out of New York while the getting was good, which is to say that I saw that things were becoming more woke and poisoned with this kind of purity testing and nanny corporatism, this new what do I want to call it? This sort of like, I think about like the 80s and the Puritans back then, like, were conservatives, right? The ones that are against sex and drugs and trying to pass these moral laws against fun. These sort of like finger wagging types of women, right? Who were frigid, uptight. And I feel like the left is the new version of that. And that was starting around the time I left New York, of just these people who claimed to be virtuous lefties who cared about everybody, but were just really interested in putting rules on everybody. And there was no better example than COVID for that. And I'm shocked that all these women are silent right now during stuff like this. And so when I first uncovered this, I hadn't started my podcast yet, but this was the kind of story that I was like afraid to talk about it, because I didn't want to come off as some sort of conservative Trump supporter. And this is a conservative dream or nightmare scenario, right? It's like, if you are conservative, this is as bad as it gets. And I'm going to argue that you don't need to be conservative to be outraged by this kind of thing. I'll just read you the AI overview that Google is giving me here. The Rotherham scandal refers to the systemic grooming, sexual exploitation, and trafficking of an estimated 1,400 vulnerable children, mostly girls, from care homes by grooming gangs in the English town of Rotherham between 1997 and 2013. Perpetrators were predominantly British Pakistani men. It says British hyphen Pakistani. They were all Pakistani. I mean, maybe second generation. Some of them for sure maybe had citizenship, but it's I don't know if I would go as far as calling them British in this case. That's kind of a euphemistic language at work, and I guess we don't need to focus on it. But suffice to say, there's a race and religion element here, and that's what makes this a bit of a third rail to even discuss, right? Me saying, like, there's no way that this will be advertised on YouTube, given all the incendiary language that I'm not going to shy away from. Continuing, official investigations, most notably the 2014 J report, exposed that local authorities and police failed to protect victims. Institutional failures were driven by a disregard for the victims, understaffing, and a documented fear among officials of being accused of racism if they investigated the perpetrators. So what we have here is like every level of protection and governance in the country, from staffers at care homes to the police to investigators to doctors, everybody is ignoring this and covering it up because of how vile it is politically, and they don't want to be racist against the Pakistani Muslims committing these horrific crimes. So instead of protecting these girls, like prepubescent girls, some as young as age like 4, being raped, instead of protecting these kind of girls, they're looking the other way because they don't want to appear racist to people like you and me. And I get it. I'm kind of relating to them insofar as I'm the kind of person who wants to express my outrage and explain to you, dear viewer, why I'm outraged and why you should also be outraged. And yet I was afraid of talking about this also 10 years ago, because that was a time, I mean, over these last 10 years, right? It's been a time where talking about anything like this would just come across as, quote, Islamophobic, right? And even as this new case has come out, this countrywide investigation known now as the Rape Gang Inquiry Report, this is basically taking the Rotherham scandal and blowing it up times 250,000 essentially. That's like, so this number right here, 1,400, just to give some perspective, if I look up the Catholic Church scandal, some of these searches, by the way, will show as having already been searched because I already have tried to do this live stream a few times and just failed from technical difficulties. But yeah, I've gone through a lot of this already. I'm putting this in perspective here. Catholic priest, sexual abuse. The reporters uncovered that dozens of abusive priests were protected. Dozens. So we're talking like 30 to 50 to 90. And the abuse was systemic, top-down issue rather than the actions of a few isolated individuals. So, like, the outrage here, and it should be an outrage, just like I'm saying that in the movie Irreversible, that single crime, one specific violent sex crime, is outrageous on its own. So any multiplicable of that is bad. So you take one heinous sex crime and you apply that crime to dozens of priests, and that's really bad, right? How many victims are alleged in this in the scope of this scandal. "800 individuals formally came forward with allegations of sexual abuse." I actually know somebody who was sexually abused by a priest, and he didn't come forward, so I know that this number is low, and I think that most numbers are lowballed in general when we talk about crime. Like when we talk about burglaries, when we talk about pickpockets, like how the hell can you possibly find an accurate number for those things, right? The amount of illegal immigrants in the country, another fun topic, right? Like how do you estimate that? You can only get a certain number from whatever stat finding tools you have, and those are always going to fail to cover everything. So these numbers are all low. That's my kind of heuristic perspective here. But 800, yeah. So then I'll just finish this paragraph here. "A comprehensive 2003 investigation conducted by the Massachusetts Attorney General Tom Riley detailed that while the Archdiocese's internal files documented 789 specific victim complaints, the actual scope across 6 decades from 1940 onward likely affected well over 1,000 victims." And that's terrible, obviously. "Concentrated harm. The investigation highlighted that the systemic damage was heavily concentrated. More than 130 people came forward to accuse just one individual, defrocked priest John Keegan." So this man, John Keegan, I think we can all agree is vile and deserves to be locked up and removed from society, at least locked up, if not killed, maybe chemically castrated. That's kind of the political spectrum of opinion on something like this. I don't think very many people just think he deserves a slap on the wrist. The Pope just thinks he should be moved over there. So that would be the extreme lenience position. Killing him in public by a angry mob is probably the most extreme position to have. And I think all of us fall somewhere between those. But I'm just kind of emphasizing, I want you to get on board here that sex crimes are bad, and systematizing these crimes is bad in an exponentially worse way. So that's where we're at. All right. Now, to come back, the Rotherham scandal, this is one town in England. That one already outdoes the last one. And with this scandal, like, I'm just imagining the nightmare scenarios of being, let's say, a young altar boy. Let's say you're a 10-year-old boy and your priest suddenly makes passes at you, starts touching you inappropriately. The things that he's having you do, how often is this happening? How bad are these things? And again, I'll reiterate, it's all bad. So even if he's just merely putting his hand too close on your leg and lingering eye contact, that's already bad. That's already an abuse of his power. That's already mild abuse. Even that kind of mild seductive look is corrupting an innocent mind more than it should ever be corrupted. That's how I feel. If I was this boy's father, that's how I would feel. Just looking at him weird would be enough for me to for sure take my kid out of this church and maybe have words with this priest and maybe seek some sort of police intervention of some sort, right? Just from merely the friction of sexual appetite being shown to a child, right? And this was covered really well in this HBO docu-series about Nickelodeon, right? Quiet on Set, yeah. So yeah, this series was really interesting, and I actually found what most interesting about this series was like the perspective of a father who knew something was fishy on the set of one of these shows and really wanted to remove his son from the set because he could see that one of the workers was predatory. But that man lost custody of his kid. The mom was a lot less somehow invested in caring about this. Bad parenting obviously is a major factor in a lot of these things. And lo and behold, this kid becomes the target of this man who then proceeds to groom him and molest him for years. And I think what I'm wanting to say with the Catholic Church, and I'm kind of making up a story here, so this is all conjecture, but I'm just imagining that this certain priest that we just looked at, who is like responsible for 130 molestations of boys, I'm just imagining how much access he had to each boy and for how long, right? Like, I don't know if it's naive of me to think that some of them could be one-offs. I'm sure that once you groom somebody like this into your own machinations, that this is a dynamic that will continue for at least weeks, if not months, into years, right? And this is what's so terrifying about it. And I think a lot of us might think about the excellent TV series Twin Peaks, one of my favorites, as it is yours probably. Like the horror is like, it's not just this one-off experience in an alleyway by a stranger. This is like repeated over and over. This becomes part of your lifestyle. You have to like dread this on a regular basis. And I wonder how much that was the case with the priests. That's where I'm not sure. I don't know if the movie went into that, and my memories of this scandal is fuzzy. But in this case, on the Nickelodeon set, this was years long that this man just had access to this boy and was raping him. And when this happens to a victim, there's this sense of like normalization that happens. And I feel like this, even though I haven't been the victim of a crime like that, even when something like calamitous happens in our cities, right, like 9/11 or like the fires here in the Palisades, like my instinct is to start thinking like, this isn't too bad, this can be normalized, we can get through this, right? And like I start immediately going in that direction in my brain, and I think victims do the same thing, right? Like, okay, now how am I going to endure this? What do I do next? You know, there's so many like cases like this that really piss me off. You know, like there was this one in Ohio, basement girl escapes, something like this. Yeah, in 2016, I remember this one. A 13-year-old girl escaped a North Toledo, Ohio basement where she was shackled by relatives. She found a spare key to her handcuffs, bolted after 9 p.m., and flagged down a Good Samaritan. Her father and adult brother were arrested while attempting to flee to the home. Missingkids.com. This one as well. Amanda Berry disappeared at age 16. Gina De Jesus, 14 years at 14 a year later. Their discovery followed a dramatic bid for freedom by Amanda Berry on Monday. 3 brothers have been arrested in connection with the case. City officials are to hold a news conference. What a terribly written article this is. Ariel Castro. Yeah. This, like, I remember when this happened, and it like really upsets me, you know? I mean, the book Room and movie. This is where Brie Larson became a big name. Stories like this, right? They just really fucking get to me. And all this to say, let's just get to it, right? I mean, so this is the actual report. It took me some time to actually find this on the internet. You can find it at rapeganginquiryreport.org. When I Googled this, I just Googled it like this, and help is available shows up right away, which is valid, right? Like, I guess the wording makes it sound like I want to report a rape gang, maybe as a victim. So I guess it's good that Google does that. But like, I was having a hard time literally finding that report, because all of these are separate reports. Like, this is such a big deal that like this has been reported on multiple times. So we're just now talking about the latest one of these kind of inquiries, because it is such a major problem in the UK that is still has no solution. No one is dealing with this at all still. It's just insane to me. Anyway, this is the actual report. This is what it looks like. And we'll get into it, but let's go over the summary of it first. Right. So here it is. This is like a decent infographic of it, I think. Key findings at a glance, a report by Rupert Lowe, he's in the MP, and a team of experts and contributors. Now let's lay out some biases and whatnot first and foremost. This is a political issue. Rupert Lowe is a politician. He's maybe gonna try and run for being prime minister, which was ironically just announced today. There's a new prime minister in the UK, in England. He is not it, but he is coming from a political stance against immigration. So let's just be honest with that. Like, he has a biased agenda, and insofar as I find this report alarming and his findings to be accurate, I am sympathetic to that agenda. And I want to just say that straight up, because I think a lot of us, myself included in the past, I think a lot of us shy away from this kind of story because we don't want to reach certain conclusions. We might fancy ourselves as very good human beings who have these highfalutin liberal values of acceptance and tolerance and freedom of movement and open borders, and heaven forbid we challenge this value that we've made up for ourselves with anything that scrutinizes immigration policy. And I find it really annoying, honestly. Like, I feel pretty, I guess conservative. I feel moderate, honestly. I'm a centrist voter, and I try to aim for moderation and balance in all things, including my politics and my cities and the places I live. But to me, after you flood a place, as Biden did, with hundreds of millions of illegal immigrants with no sense of who they are or where they are now within the country, I think that was extreme. I think that was a radical thing to do, and I think that trying to find such people is a valid reaction from the right in this country. It's not a topic that I would prioritize. I don't really care about that, and I definitely don't think that all people entering from the southern border are criminals. I don't think that they're all rapists or even sex pests or just kind of taking advantage of American welfare. But the fact that some of them do, for sure, take advantage of the welfare system, and that some of them don't pay in as much as they take out, it burdens our society. And I just don't understand why it's a conservative thing to want to have a moderate immigration policy where we know who we're letting in. That's not conservative. It would be conservative to, like, it's for sure conservative to go into removing birthright citizenship. That's conservative. It would be conservative to make claims that only certain ethnicities or bloodlines are American. That would be very conservative to me. That would be far right, I would say. But to think like, oh, well, maybe we should take accounting for everybody that's in this country, and maybe you don't just get automatic citizenship just because you're here. That's not conservative. That's a moderate position. I think it's a radical position to say that there are no such thing as borders. That's a very radical position. I think it's radical to say that anybody that's here deserves to be a citizen, because that's ignoring the the systems in place to become citizens in the first place. There's a queue. You have to get in line, right? Anyway, this is all beside the point. I lived in Europe for a long time as an American, and so I have a perspective here of the shoe being on the other foot. I've been in this position where I've had to fight to belong somewhere, and it was hard. And I don't have the entitlement thinking. I don't think that just because I say so that I should be allowed to become a citizen in Germany. Like, I'm not entitled to that. And because I know that as an American who even buys into much of the value system of Germany, except for the jaywalking attitudes, like, I buy into a lot of what Germany stands for, and even so, I don't think I'm entitled to be a citizen there. I'm not entitled to live there as long as I want. I'm not entitled to free healthcare or education just because I have a freedom of movement to travel to Germany. I'm not entitled to that. So why is it that a Honduran or an Ecuadorian is entitled to be in the USA? They're not. And that's not conservative. Germany is not conservative. Germany does not have conservative immigration policies. Far from it. And yet I was not allowed to stay there indefinitely. I had to go into a very bureaucratic, annoying process every 2 years to justify myself being in Germany. So that is my personal life experience that I'm bringing to the table here when I think about the hordes of immigrants from South Asia, the Indian subcontinent, who have flooded into Great Britain. What entitles them to do that? The number one argument I hear is that the UK is an imperialist colonizing empire, and because they colonized India, that therefore all of India gets to move to the UK. And I think that's a bullshit argument. Do you know how many people are in India? I mean, I even just found the world, what am I typing in right now? The world divided into quarters by population. I just saw this today. Yeah. So you want to tell me that the 2 billion people here are entitled to all move right here or here? Like, I don't think people understand how many people are in India and how many people would rather live in places that have clean drinking water and flushing toilets. Like, obviously everybody wants to do that. You think that everyone should just be able to move to your house because of that? I don't. And I don't think it's radical of me to say that. I think it's very moderate to admit that I'm fortunate to have been born where I've been born and that I have functional plumbing and that not everybody does. And I feel blessed from that, but I don't feel so guilty. I don't have this white guilt or privileged guilt that I should give that up and give it to somebody else just because they weren't born with it. And I think that's kind of like the toxic mentality that a lot of people have on this topic. So yeah, this is like, this is a real thing. Let's go back to this. All right, this inquiry examined the systematic organized sexual exploitation of vulnerable children, predominantly white British girls, by grooming gangs across the UK. It concludes this is one of the most horrifying failures in modern British history. I mean, I would say it's the most horrifying failure in modern history. Like, I think that I don't know how it could be worse than this. Like, I have a lot of sympathies to, like, the Bring Our Girls Home campaign. What am I doing? Right? So, like, Michelle Obama spearheaded this a bit. Bring Back Our Girls. Global advocacy movement that originated in April 2014 following the abduction of 276 schoolgirls by the terrorist group Boko Haram in Chibok, Nigeria. Mobilized international support to pressure governments for the rescue of these victims. We're only talking about 276 girls. We're talking about Nigerian girls, Catholic Christian girls, probably, abducted by a Muslim jihadist terrorist group, and for sure, gang raped and married off underage. There's no doubt about that. But there was 276 of them. I think it's worse, and this is my own bias because I am a Westerner and I can relate more to white girls in Britain than Nigerian girls. I can admit that. It's not like I think that white girls are superior. It's just that I relate to them more. And to me, I think it's worse for my country, if I was British, to import criminals, known criminals, who were banished already from places like the Philippines, in between being banished from Pakistan, to bring them in order to sexually exploit me and ruin my life or my daughter's life for years. I think that's worse than growing up with civil unrest in Nigeria, already knowing how dangerous the world is. Like, a Nigerian girl has a fundamentally deeper and more holistic understanding of the evils of the world than a young British girl. That's just the way it is, right? Like, you know that there's basically a civil war happening in Nigeria, and you kind of intuit that your life is in danger, that your systems of policing and a system of justice are not as strong as they ought to be in the United Kingdom or any Western country. The US, for all of our faults and for how terrible our justice system is, it's better than in Nigeria, okay? I can guarantee you that. So you kind of have there's a greater disconnect. There's a greater travesty of expectation versus reality, right? Like, in no timeline should a 6-year-old British girl be gang raped hundreds of times by Pakistani Muslims in the United Kingdom and then married off to Saudi Arabia. That should not happen ever, let alone 2,000 times or 200,000 times. Like, it's insane, right? I mean, it's just insane to me that this is what we're talking about. Like, I think a lot of us might remember this story a bit because Michelle Obama did good to broadcast it. And even here, we're only talking about 200, 300 girls, okay? 250,000 young white girls have been estimated to have been subjected to repeated rape and gang rape, trafficking, physical and emotional torture, raped by dogs, punched in the face, cut with knives, okay, threatened to be shot with guns, battered with bats, okay, like legitimate torture that no priest is doing. No priest of the Catholic diocese is having a dog rape the altar boy while videotaping the girl's face until they break, crying, and then yelling at them, Allahu Akbar, and that you deserve this because you're not a Muslim, okay? Like, it's I'm jumping the gun. Like, I'm not gonna read all this to you, right? I'm gonna read this infographic to you, but I'm not gonna read all of this to you. But Asmongold will on YouTube, and I recommend watching it. Or maybe you can just download this and read it yourself. But like, I will try and scan some of this. It's horrendous, and I'm just gonna like. So I've read this all. I've listened to it being read rather. And maybe I'll like read one of these victim testimonies a bit. But like, it's so bad. So I'm gonna be like dropping in what I already know about that, right? So like, given that I've already read this, I'm just trying to impart on you what it says. And it's as bad as you can imagine it to be, and worse. And I can appreciate, to an extent, not wanting to even listen to me talk anymore about this. Like, you don't have to keep watching, you can turn it off. But my only point is that this is a real thing. And so like, I sent this to a buddy of mine who's from the UK, and I also was bringing this up to my parents, and like, their typical their reactions really soured me on talking about this in general. Like, it took me a while to even get to be able to do this live stream right now, because I know how dismissive people are. Like, when I shared this to a few people, they were just saying, oh, white people do that too. I don't know why we're focusing on the Pakistani Muslims here. Like, white men are just as bad. Are they? Like, prove it to me. Okay? Like, I'm annoyed enough that you are changing the subject and making this about race and making this into a competition with your white guilt, that you don't want to point any finger at somebody from the Indian subcontinent because that feels so icky to you. That's already annoying. But your claim that white people are just as bad, is it true? Why do you think that it's true, even? What makes you even think that that is a true statement? How many white rape gangs can you name? I mean, the Catholic Church, for sure, you could say is one of them, I guess. And I agree that it's bad. And when we talked about the Catholic Church, I didn't change the subject. Okay? When that movie came out, I wasn't like saying, oh yeah, but what about Boko Haram? I mean, it's hard not to make those kind of connections when the connections are real. But I wonder, like, with my dad or with my buddy Ben, like, when their mind goes there, are they even thinking of a real example, or are they just trying to escape the icky feeling of feeling racist? Like, oh no, what if Muslim Pakistanis are worse? Like, how do you even live with yourself if you know that, and you want to be a good anti-racist person? Like, how do you even carry on if you kind of realize the extent of these crimes that I'm gonna lay out? Like, it's very, very challenging. I can see that. It's like, it's hard to sit comfortably with the fact that some people are vile monsters coming from societies that are objectively inferior. And like, to me, I think my political journey has been one of accepting that. I just have learned to accept that not every culture in the world, let alone throughout history, shares my value system. I happen to really value freedom of expression, freedom of sexual orientation, freedom of non-gendered professional ambitions, freedom of speech. Like, I care about this stuff. And I kind of see that other places don't care about it. But instead of saying, oh, well, I only care about my stuff because of where and when I was born, and maybe if I was born in Pakistan, I would agree that if my sister was raped, I should probably kill her. No, I don't agree with that. I don't think that about myself. I would prefer to believe that if I was born in Pakistan and I had a sister who was raped, and my dad and brother wanted to honor kill her because she was her innocence was stolen and it was her fault somehow. I would like to think that I would be lofty and high-minded and in touch with universal values to protect my sister. Okay, I would rather think that way because I believe that she deserves protection and that it wasn't her fault. Okay, I would rather think that way, and I have some evidence to support that I might be like that. All right, so maybe you would just be like this, and you are only a product of your environment, and you only are into free speech because you're born American, and if you were born in Saudi Arabia, you would not be for free speech because you would just be another normie. But I would not. I like to think that I have certain values that I am pretty steadfast about, and I judge cultures and people that don't share my values. Okay? Whereas if we just have different opinions, for instance, about abortion or drug use, drug access, or something like sex drugs for underage kids who might want to transition. Like, we can disagree about that, but I think ultimately that in the US, a Democrat and a Republican, even though they disagree about those kind of topics, they don't have fundamentally opposing values. They're all liberals. So we're talking about fine details in the liberal project of human flourishing, and we're arguing over degrees. Maybe we're arguing over when life begins, or maybe we're arguing about the individual child versus the benevolent care of a parent and the wisdom of a parent. Like, those are discussions that are kind of in the weeds, I would say. Maybe not. Maybe those are tantamount to what we're talking about here. I don't think any American or British person or German or French person believes that infidels deserve to be raped, whereas Muslim girls are chaste and pure. I don't think any Westerner believes that it's your right to take as much of your pleasure as possible because this girl is a slag and asking for it. Okay? I just don't think, I think that's like a fully different way of seeing the world. And I am an enemy to that. And if you're not, I wonder why you're not. And it hurts me that when I've tried to talk about this with friends, that so many people just don't care. It's like, well, whose side are you fucking on? Like, you want to talk about, like, silence is violence. You want to talk about, the moral righteousness of standing up for, like, Palestinian babies. Like, if you care about Palestinian babies being bombed, how do you not care about this? You think this is okay? Because they're white girls? Or because the perpetrators don't know any better? What's your excuse? It's like this soft bigotry of low expectations. Oh, what do you expect of a Pakistani person? They're just from some brown country. The language of leftists is so abhorrent to me. You look at a map of the world. Let's even say by race if we can. Like, you want to tell me that, like, white people in red here are a majority? That's not true. That brown people, black and brown bodies, what a horrible phrase. Like, I would never say that about people. You're just a black or brown body? That is so dehumanizing and othering, and I hate it. You want to say that all of these groups, this purple, this, like, slate color, nice color, this crimson color, this orange color, this yellow, this brown, this teal, all of these are just brown. They're all just brown bodies. Do you know how ignorant that sounds? It's so stupid to me. Like, it's so fucking stupid to refer to people as brown people. Like, The Indian subcontinent is enormous. 2 billion people right here, okay? And it's a very diverse place, very diverse. So obviously Pakistan and India have their forever war going on. And that's largely Hindu versus Muslim, but not specifically. And yeah, that's already a major difference. We're not talking about Indians. We're not talking about people that wear a turban. We're talking about Muslims, okay? Those aren't just brown people. We're talking about a specific subset of people with specific ideas and beliefs. That's what we're talking about. So I don't want to hear this racist argument that the rape gang report is racist. You're racist if you think that, because you are reducing it to race. This report is not reducing it to race. This is like one section of this entire infographic. This whole bottom half is about white people. Okay? This whole bottom half is about the British people themselves, which is a white country until recently. 95% white until 10 years ago. Okay? Now it's like 80% white. But there's nothing racist about saying that England is a white country any more than saying that like Namibia is a black country. It's just the way it is. It's just demographic facts. Okay? Gangs operated in at least 149 local authority areas across the UK. So this is a pretty big, this is a bigger scandal in scope than the Catholic Church. All right? So if you hate the Catholic Church, this is 250 times bigger than that. If you hate Jeffrey Epstein, how many victims? Let's find that out. What do you think? Okay, 1,200. So similar to the Catholic Church. Similar. Do you think Jeffrey Epstein was shoving pipes up the asses of these girls and yelling at them that they were going to hell because they deserved it? Like, he was a vile guy. He was monstrous for sure. But what was he literally doing? And what were the girls doing with him? Right? They were victimized for sure. But they weren't dragged off the street and seduced with candy and drugs and alcohol and, gotten really drunk and high and then abused the way that these girls in Britain were. They were promised things. Oh, do you want to come to a Caribbean island? It's super nice. Like, there are no fancy jets that the Rotherham girls ever got onto, okay? There were no presidents or billionaires that these girls were meeting, all right? And again, like, I would put the victims of Jeffrey Epstein somewhere between Harvey Weinstein and the British girls, which is to say that they weren't as complicit as the girls with Harvey Weinstein, and those girls also weren't that complicit. They were still being exploited and victimized with sexual abuse, but they were after something. They were meeting him on purpose to land a film career, okay? That is different than with Jeffrey Epstein, who was trying to charm these girls, give them jobs as masseuses, and, trying to say like, oh, if you're a poor girl from West Palm Beach, I can give you $200 if you give me a blowjob. Okay, maybe I will do sex work. Okay, now you're in a little bit, right? Because you want the $200. There was no $200, all right, in the cases that I'm going into right now. There was nothing like that, all right? So that's my point. It's like, we have to care about the degrees of these kind of crimes. And it's so insane to me the way that, like, still right now in this very moment, if I asked all of my friends, if I know like 50 people, they would all probably say that Jeffrey Epstein is a monster and we need to figure out and redact, or rather unredact, all of the report, right? We have to know everything about Jeffrey Epstein. We have to get all the way to the bottom of that because it's such a big deal. And then with this, oh, well, white people are just as bad. Let's not be racist about this. Like, what the hell are you talking about? Do you care about sex crime or don't you? It sounds like you just hate the USA. It sounds like you just want to take down your own society that you benefit from. It sounds like your issue isn't with Jeffrey Epstein. You just hate Donald Trump. It sounds like you just want to see the West burn down and go anarchical because you aren't happy with your lot in life. That's what that sounds like to me. If you cared about sex crimes, it doesn't get bigger than this. Unless you want to maybe talk about whole societies like the Muslim world in which women are kept in bags because if they showed any skin, then they are literally asking for rape and that they must be subservient to all men. In which case, you are talking about the holy war that I also care about. Like, I think that Muslim countries are worse culturally and religiously than Western countries. And the reasons I think that are empirical. I don't want to see women covered from head to toe. I don't want to believe that in order to disprove a rape charge, you need 4 male witnesses. Otherwise, you're going to prison, which is the case in a lot of Muslim countries. Okay? Like, I am talking about real things. I'm not talking about skin color. How the gangs operated. Grooming. Victims were targeted with gifts, attention, alcohol, drugs, cigarettes, and false friendships. Girls were moved between locations in taxis and cars. So the whole Uber industry, for instance, was in on it. Not hard to imagine if you can picture taxis in New York City. We're talking about industries like, basically we're talking about a network of immigrants who take over the taxi industry, who take over like the janitorial industries, who take over like the basic nursing and healthcare industries at like foster care homes and stuff like that. We're talking about police officers. And once you have enough immigrants in a population taking on all these roles that are very public facing, it's not hard to corrupt all of those roles to your other subversive goal of creating your own brothel, your own, your own harem of infidels at your disposal, which is what happened here. Victims were passed between multiple men and subjected to repeated abuse. Control through fear, violence, threats, blackmail, and intimidation silenced victims. Long-term impact, severe physical and psychological trauma, self-harm, suicide, and lifelong consequences. Who were the perpetrators? The inquiry found that the vast majority of offenders were men of Pakistani Muslim heritage, around 87%. Dr. Taj Hargay estimates the true proportion of Muslim gang members is around 95%. 87 is like the Pakistani Muslims specifically. Then you have Iraqis and Somalis and some others that were like in the neighborhood that were also at the same Muslim mosque, let's say, that were, brought into the fold. And you probably had some corrupt white guys in there as well at the police force, for instance. That might make up the other 5%. Smaller numbers from other Muslim backgrounds were also involved: Somali, Iranian, Syrian, Turkish, etc. The inquiry concludes that cultural, communal, clan, and religious factors played a significant role and must be openly examined, not ignored. It reminds me of let's see, what is she talking about? Ayaan Hirsi Ali talking about clan culture. Let's see if I can pull up something like this.
Book Infidel. You wrote this fantastic memoir, 15 years ago now I think it came out. And I read it recently and I just
2007.
2007, wow.
Yeah,
okay,
wow.
So almost 10
you
to 20.
You want to talk about infidel.
I know, but I think it's relevant today. So obviously you came from Somalia, third world country, with a very different perspective on the West and how Westerners think and feel and breathe, and the whole culture is completely different. And we've imported millions of people from countries like Somalia. And I just wondered whether you can give us an insight into the mind of people who are born in these countries, who come from these cultures, and how different they are from Westerners?
Well, so in Infidel, I tried to tell that story autobiographically. I just tell you where I was born, and I also in Infidel include not just my own story, but my mother's and all the upheavals that she goes through, and then my grandmother's story. So even though it's a short period of time, I think my grandmother was born in 1919. No one knows when she was born, but my father estimates that she was born in 1919. And so she's born in a nomadic context where her family are moving from waterhole to waterhole. She had never seen a white person before. She had no clue that modern life existed. And at one point, people from her world were leaving. Maybe a child of hers, a stepchild. Somehow they would hear stories about things that happened far away in places like Aden. Aden in Yemen at the time. And for
I've read 2 of her books, and I highly recommend her as a thinker if you want to go deeper here. But I'm looking for something in particular, which is why I'm skipping through this. I'm not sure I'll find it in this talk, but I've listened to her give a lot of these kind of podcast style talks. And she talks about the clan culture that she comes from and how significant it is, how real it is. I was just listening to another podcast today with Coleman Hughes about I think in the West we underappreciate how homogenous other places are, because we have such a diversity of thought, even though within our friend groups we might not choose for that. We prefer more superficial diversities, but I value diversity of thought personally. We kind of take it for granted that people think different things. Well, it's not always like that. If you go to like more homogenous places like China, but definitely like in Pakistan or Somalia, you don't have a lot of pushback to mainstream ideas. You basically have none. You have a 99% buy-in of Islam, of full submission to everything that entails. It's not like some people are like, oh yeah, but I actually like bacon, or oh, I actually think that women should be free. Like, you will be shunned and ostracized and maybe killed, okay, for even having those kind of thoughts. And yet somehow in the West we think like, oh yeah, it's not all Somalis that are like this. Like, it's obviously not, because you have heroic people like this who can come out of societies like that, and those are people we should be elevating for sure. But the clan aspect is something that I don't think we can fully appreciate, and that's what took hold so successfully in the UK. And I don't really blame the UK for not seeing it coming. Like, how would we? Because we don't operate like that. Like, I don't know anyone that is part of a clan. Maybe in Appalachia.
the north, which was British Somaliland, and south, which was Italian Somaliland. When my mother was a teenager and in her early 20s, they used to have this big dream that they're going to become independent. And when independence comes and the white man is kicked out, life will be good. And so my mom is working as this housekeeper, and she's saving her money. And she ends up going to Mogadishu because that's going to be the capital city. And my mother was married before.
I'm sorry, guys. This is not quite what I want to spend our time on. She's going her autobiography, which is fascinating. She ends up getting to Amsterdam, living in the Netherlands. She ends up becoming a politician there, standing up for liberal values. And she just has like a crazy story. Here's an actual essay by her from last year. I think there's this element I guess I'm getting at here, and it's true for the US just like in UK, is that we're kind of taken for the fool when we presume that everybody is like us. So when we import immigrants, we kind of assume that they'll be respectful of their host country. We kind of presume that they'll assimilate because it's in their mutual interest to assimilate. And these presumptions are faulty and dangerous. And it's not to say that we should stop looking for the good in people. It's not to say that we should end immigration. I don't believe that personally. But I do think it makes sense to vet things and to understand the people that you're allowing into your home. Even if you don't, even if it's down the street from you. I think that it's folly to do otherwise, and then once you recognize that you've made a mistake, it's probably better to correct it rather than just let it go on and on. Institutional and political failure. The inquiry concludes that public institutions repeatedly failed to protect children. Failures included the concerns and evidence were ignored or downplayed. Victims were disbelieved, blamed, or criminalized. Evidence was not recorded, shared, or acted upon. Fear of accusations of racism and damaging community relations discouraged action. Political correctness and vote chasing put ideology above children. Warnings were raised for decades but not heeded. And this is also why, I'm going to show a few more things in relation to all these comments now, these points. The vote chasing thing, right? Why might the governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, want to look the other way when his state is being examined for mass fraud? Well, that's a voting bloc, right? And I think this is a terrible cynicism that the Democrats have taken as a playbook maneuver. They want to build a coalition of voters through minority groups, and I find it reprehensible. I think it's really stupid. I think looking at people as groups, like I said before about brown people, I think it's so dumb and it's not even accurate. Mexicans don't all vote the same. In fact, most of them are conservative. There's a reason so many of them swung for Trump. They're Catholics. They actually, especially the ones that are here legally, you think they want to see a bunch of people show up illegally when they waited in line? Why do you think that they all want mass illegal immigration? That's racist to think. And it's racist to presume that they'll all vote for you just because of their skin color. It's stupid. It's stupid. And Biden is on record saying that, you ain't black if you don't want to vote for me. You ain't black. Biden's view of black people is so racist to think that they all should just vote for him because he's Democrat. I'm going to raise social benefits for you. I'm going to give you guys all welfare. You should vote for me. All black people should vote for me because I'm pro-welfare. Ignoring the fact that Donald Trump was immensely popular within the rap community for decades before he even became a politician because of his bootstrap mentality, because he has this swagger of making it. He has this kind of, respectable hood culture value of I'm getting out of here on my own. I'm going to lift myself up. I'm going to become somebody. Do you know how popular the movie Scarface is among minority groups? I've seen that poster in a lot of rooms of Mexicans and black kids. It's Scarface is a Republican movie, basically, right? This rags to riches story of this guy from Cuba coming into Florida and becoming a cocaine kingpin and shooting everybody in his mansion to die on that hill of his life. That's a very popular story with a lot of minority groups. I want to show you guys this example of victims were disbelieved, blamed, and criminalized. I'm going to go through some of my Reddit tabs here. We'll just take a detour here. My bloodline ends with me. I would take all immigrants and refugees in because we ruined the world. It's the German feminist. Verena Braunschweiger urges Europeans and white people not to have children, claiming that pro-natalists want to control women and keep refugees out. This is so bleak and so sad and terrible to me. We ruined the world. Therefore, come and step on us and take over this country because it's not ours. Fuck that.
What does race have to do with it?
Leave her alone, lad.
Yo.
Oi. Yo.
Yo. Leave her alone, she ain't interested. She just said she ain't interested, bro. Yo. Leave her alone, man. She don't want to talk to you, bro. She don't want to talk to you, bro. Can you see how fast? Bro, she's walking away from you so fast. She's scared. Leave her alone, bro.
Follow a girl ever. Then go talk to her then.
We don't need to talk to her, bro. We can tell she's fucking scared.
Go talk to her then.
No. I'm talking to you. Leave her alone.
Then leave me alone.
No, you leave her alone.
I'm not talking to you. Leave me alone.
Leave her alone.
I'm not chatting to you. Leave
Brother,
me alone.
leave the fucking girl alone.
Leave
Back
me
away.
alone, please.
Leave her alone. Leave her alone. Go that way. Go that way. You what? You won't do shit. You will not do nothing.
You will do nothing.
You'll do.
Should I be reading these headlines to you guys? African migrant gang beats French teen Lewis to death. Video uploaded by attackers. Zero coverage from CNN, NBC, ABC, Reuters, The Guardian, AP, WAPO, NYT, MSNBC, NPR. Of course. Germany, train conductors urged not to check tickets of foreigners to keep the peace. The Thüringer Allgemein reported on Sunday that railway staff had been informed to do all they can to de-escalate troublesome travelers, even if that meant effectively giving them a free pass on their commute. State and federal politics repeatedly talk about integration and tolerance towards migrants, refugees. We ask you seriously, how can you expect citizens of this country to be open to the refugee policy being practiced when they have to witness practically every day, and not just on public transport, such violence, brutality, and absolute contempt and mockery of our laws and society, including its so-called values? This is a two-tier system that is happening in all these cases where we hold ourselves to this accountability of like our values, like don't kill people, don't rape people, don't steal, whatever. But then we have this underclass of people that for some reason, because we feel pity, we're going to let them have their own laws. Oh, well, they get to do child rape because it's in their culture. They get to ride for free because it would be racist to ask them to pay for something. We see it in the US all the time, obviously, with like, you know, homelessness and stuff in LA. Like, if I park my car, like, by the Silver Lake Reservoir for more than 2 hours, I'll get a ticket. But there's a camper van there right now that's been parked there for weeks. It just stays there forever. It won't get a ticket because why would they even bother ticketing somebody that's part of the underclass and not even playing that game, right? They're not deterred by tickets, so I ticket them. So they just get to park there forever. That's fucked up.
They chased me away from the house. They said you must leave this country to back home to Zimbabwe.
A fake poster gave 3 million people a deadline to leave South Africa. June 13. Get out or face the consequences.
If there is a foreigner in Africa, why don't South Africans go to Orania, where those white people are in South Africa? And you black people are not allowed to enter Orania. Mara, you are fighting a black to black. How is it that?
So, what's happening and why is the anger aimed almost entirely at black Africans? It began with mobs checking strangers' accents, then checks burn, shops close, and eventually migrants killed. Thousands from Malawi, Nigeria, Ghana, and Mozambique are being sent home, some on government buses, some on chartered flights. Unemployment in South Africa is above 30%, and foreigners are blamed. But migrants are under 5% of the population. This isn't spontaneous. It's organized, amplified online, wished by politicians chasing votes before November's local elections. They aim a jobless country at migrants, while the white minority that has owned most of the land and the economy since apartheid goes untouched.
Everyone is afraid because you know how xenophobic this is. So we are too afraid. We are too afraid.
I am including this one here in South Africa against other black surrounding neighbors because I want to show that it's not about race. Any country can decide that it doesn't want foreigners in, doesn't want immigrants in. If it suffers from something, like, it's become this like cliche, this like mockery from the left that like, oh, blame foreigners. Well, people do blame foreigners and maybe they're wrong, but there's some value to that, right? Like, to me, I always try and relate it to my life. Like, if I have a party, let's say if I have a girlfriend and we're living together and we have a party and there becomes some problem at the party, right? Like maybe a friend of a friend of a friend or someone that doesn't really know someone shows up and they start trying to like hit on my girlfriend. Well, that's not welcome in my house, right? I'm going to stand up against that and I might try and kick him out. Now, maybe it's true that the problem isn't him. Maybe I am a jealous person or vice versa. My girlfriend is jealous of me. And the attention that we're getting, maybe it's not fair to blame that other third party, right? Maybe we have our own domestic issues to work out. But nonetheless, I don't want this person here. They have caused trouble. This was like a gathering of friends, and now there's this tension, and this guy just thinks he's allowed to hit on my girlfriend, right? That's not welcome. I'm not going to tolerate that, all right? And I don't want to be told that I'm now intolerant or everyone belongs here. No, it's my house, okay? And that's how it feels for a lot of countries like Hungary or Poland or China or Japan or South Africa. It's like South Africa is behaving more xenophobic and extremist and conservative than I would personally. But it's within any country's rights to close its borders and to ask people to leave by deportation. And they're doing it in a way that the UK never will. If the UK does deportations, or the US, like, that is much worse than ICE, you guys. If you're against ICE, you should be against that. I don't know why you're against that. Everyone has a right to defend their borders if they want to. But people are super against ICE, so I guess you're super against this as well. Like, South Africa does not want people from Zimbabwe coming in. They just don't want that. And I think that it's probably extreme. I don't know this situation enough, but the South African government is pretty crazy these days. And this is a form of right-wing populism that people are so quick to criticize when white countries do it. So I thought I would show that to you. I'm getting to what I really care about.
Like this?
They've committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked, they're gone.
You are going to pay a significant fine.
And you have to pay a stiff fine because you came here illegally.
You are going to learn English.
And you have to try to learn English. And you have to wait in line.
You are going to go to the back of the line so that you don't get ahead of somebody who was in Mexico City applying legally.
People who enter the United States without our permission are illegal aliens, and illegal aliens should not be treated the same as people who entered the U.S. legally.
This is not going to be a free ride.
Illegal immigration is wrong.
We are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of laws.
But they can't have a situation where you just have 500,000 people pouring over the border without any kind of mechanism to control it.
What happened to the Democrats?
Good question. I mean, even those guys, Obama and the Clintons, come off as like too gruff about border control that I would. But I fully agree. Like, I come from this era of the Democratic Party. Like, to me, defending borders is just a natural consequence of having a country. Like, I just find it insane that like people like who have I watched lately, like Hassan Piker is big on this. Like, everyone should be allowed to come in, and we should be giving everything to everybody at the same time. Like, you cannot have both functionally. You can only have both if your goal is to destroy a place. Like, if I have $1 billion and I tell everybody that I will pay for all their food, that works if there's 10 people here. At 100, okay, maybe. But at 1 billion, I can only give $1 per person. And this is the argument. Like, well, okay, we're a rich country. Yes, but we cannot pay for everybody. We can't do that. All right, here we go. This is what I want to show you. No longer available, but I'll find it. Hold on. Okay. All right, guys. This is finally what I've meant to show you. Police in the UK attack. To remind you why I'm showing this to you, I'm talking about this point right here. Victims were disbelieved, blamed, and criminalized. And that's like a big accusation against the British police, right? So I wouldn't just believe that unless I had reason to believe that. And I've had years of watching this happen. And it just happened right after this story broke in late June rather. When did this story come out? One month ago. This next one happened, and I just think it's so on point with like. Let's watch this. Let's watch this again. Our main character is this guy in the white shirt, this white bloke, okay? Not this one. Okay, so here he is in back. You have all these guys over here. I don't know if they're his friends or bystanders or what. They're just like watching. We're on some major public high street in, I don't know if it's Birmingham or somewhere in northern UK. Then you have this group of black people. You have this one in all black. You have this one with a white shirt. You have these girls. Okay. And then there's one more guy in white that we can't see right now. Right. So this guy in white is antagonizing the white guy. I think it's safe to say that. Is the white guy fighting him? It doesn't look like a fight to me. He's being surrounded, okay? So you have this guy on that side. This other white guy in glasses is like trying to maybe be involved and help him. I can't quite tell what that guy's doing. And then you have these two very rowdy guys, like, I don't know what they're shouting. Okay, the guy in the white is like holding up his arms like this, right? It's like very antagonizing and threatening. And now suddenly we have this guy over here on the left. He's gonna just clothesline the guy with his arm. He just tackles him. And then he gets punched in the back of the head. He gets punched in the back of the head by that other guy. And then somehow miraculously the police show up. This is at second 13 of the video, second 12. Okay? This guy's getting punched in the back of the head at second 12. Boom. Okay? And now the police, this cop has just shown up at second 13. 1 second later. Like, you cannot make this up. And he throws a punch at second 14. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was just clotheslined, tackled, and then punched in the back of the head in succession within 5 seconds, and then somebody else like pushed me up against a wall, I might throw a punch. It's sensible, right?
Oi, 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 oi! Gee!
Do not fucking punch me right! Put your hand behind your back! Put your hand behind your back!
I'm trying to move that way, bro!
Gee, what? You just fucking punched me!
I was trying to explain to me. I was trying to like defend myself against those guys.
My nan's actually, I was trying to move that way, bro! What the fuck?
I'm gonna show you guys a 3-minute version of Osmongold talking about this, and I'll tell you that like I know a lot of people don't like Asmongold, and he's not for everybody's taste. He's like a very scruffy, unkempt fellow who might not share my aesthetics, my sensibilities, but he's a smart guy and he makes good points very consistently, and that's what I care about when I consume YouTube videos often. I think this is what he tiled it.
So Rupert Lowe brought out the rape gang.
This is him talking about what I'm talking about. This is him reading it for 7 hours. That's what I listen to. I recommend you do the same. I should have this pulled up, shouldn't I? Here we go.
We would ask that footage is not shared further to allow the legal process to take its course. Insane clip from the UK. Police are arresting someone who got assaulted. What the hell? 3 blacks attack a drunk white kid in Birmingham. The female police officer comes in to protect the violent blacks and arrests the white kid. Absolutely disgusting the way white people are treated in England. Okay, well, let's see the original video.
In his defense, he probably thought you were one of the attackers.
Right.
Oh my God. And punch it.
Oi, 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 oi.
Do not fucking punch him right. Put your hand behind your back. Put your hand behind your back.
I'm trying to move that way, bro.
What? You just fucking punched me in the face.
My nan's actually is...
Why are they trying to restrain him?
I'm trying to go home, bro.
Put your arms straight.
Please, please. I'm trying
Oh my God. This is disgraceful.
Please, I'm trying to go home.
You're under arrest for assault on police.
Are you gonna walk to the fucking car, you dick?
Oh, bro, please.
How did you know? Get in the car. In the fucking car.
They're not even talking to the people that attacked him.
Someone clotheslined him, and then someone hit him from behind, and that's when you went in. And all I can say in his defense, he probably thought you were one of the attackers at that moment.
Okay, so somebody's assaulted him first.
Yeah.
You saw it. You watched it. Look, so the police are right. They're right there. There's the police car. It's right in the frame. And you can see very clearly all of these people are antagonizing this one person. And you can see he's not hitting anybody. He's not doing anything. Then this guy's going to go and hit him. He's going to clothesline him. Look at that. See? And then this dude punches him in the back of the head. Yeah, he doesn't even hardly know. It was like 1 second. And then they're grabbing his throat. Yeah, she grabbed him and he didn't even see her. He instantly stops when he realizes that's the main thing. Yeah, he stopped immediately. He's not doing anything. I mean, if he was really trying to fight her or do something, he would have continued fighting back, but he's not doing that. Please stop. This is enraging me. Yeah, I don't know how many more of these we're going to have to deal with before people have any sense of self-respect. Throwing him inside of the car. Do you think they would have treated a migrant like this? I've never seen a single video of a police officer in Britain.
Such vitriol, the way that that male cop like forced him in there. It's like so violent.
Before people have any sense of self-respect, throwing him inside of the car. Do you think they would have treated a migrant like this? I've never seen a single video of a police officer in Britain treating a migrant like this. So, and then this is also, so this is the response. We're aware of the footage of the man showing a disorder on Broad Street. Officers found a group of men fighting. As the incident was dealt with, an officer was punched. One man was arrested and charged with assaulting a police officer. The description is false. One man was surrounded by multiple others. The man was assaulted and thrown to the ground. While on the ground, he was punched in the head. While getting up, a police officer threw him against the wall while his assailants were allowed to flee. The incident has been reviewed, and we have no concerns over the officer's actions, and we are satisfied that they were reasonable and proportionate in the circumstances. We would ask that footage is not shared further to allow the legal process to take its course. We are at the stage of openly admitting arresting the victim is satisfactory. If the footage absolves you, then why don't you want it shared? You watched one lad get violently attacked by a group and decided to arrest the guy being attacked. In his defense, he stood up swinging and instantly stopped as soon as he realized who was grabbing him. He probably didn't think in a million years he was in the process of being arrested. This dude gets punched in the face and the police rush in to arrest him. That is insane.
Now, extrapolate from that the white guy is a young white girl and that the attackers are Pakistani rapists, and that's what we have happening en masse, literally. And I feel I'm like getting chills thinking about how awful this is, and I'm imagining like the pushback I might get from friends and family, like, Keith, why are you caring about this one issue? This is an isolated incident. Aren't there other things that you care about locally? Like, why do you care about the UK all of a sudden? That's what my friend Ben said. Like, I find this to be so scary and damning because of what it signifies. Like, I find it to be this act of suicidal empathy that the UK came out of World War II untouched. Hitler never got his army into the United Kingdom the way he did with France and the west of Western Europe. And out of that came some good things like universal health care for everybody, but also this sense of like guilt, like, wow, we're so lucky, it's not really fair. Everybody else, should has gone through all this hardship. We don't deserve to be so fortunate. Let's put undue hardship on ourselves now. And then after that period in the 50s onward, you have this unprecedented series of decolonizing events. If you look at a map, the former British Empire was enormous. I think we all kind of know that, but this was what it used to look like, okay? None of this is real anymore. The UK has given freedoms and sovereignty to Canada, to Belize, to the Bahamas, all these little dots. Jamaica's free. You still have what's that tax haven? There's one island right here that you can't even see. That's still British territory. Another one maybe of these is British territory, but Antigua and Anguilla and St. Kitts and Nevis and Barbados, they're all free now, okay? All these countries, obviously Egypt, Nigeria, South Africa, Botswana, all these are free. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Australia. So the UK has actively given up all of its colonies. That's my point, okay? Which is great. That's fine. I don't have an opinion about that. It doesn't matter. I mean, I would rather a place be free if it wants to be than not. You compare that to the French, right? I mean, the French Empire is still looks like this. It doesn't. The French have not given up everything. So, in contrast, why is it showing it in conjunction? That's really annoying. Where are you getting the word union from? Oh, I have it there. My bad. French, British. My bad. Yeah. You wonder why, for instance, the French football team is so black. It's because Algeria, all these countries are still French. Iraq is not. or what? That's not Iraq. This is Iraq. Jordan and Syria, Vietnam. Those are free, but like Suriname is French. Guadeloupe is French. Martinique is French. Saint Bart's is French. This part of Canada. The French Polynesia is not even. Oh yeah, it's this huge thing. This is all still French right here. They're not giving up any of that. So like the French Empire is like not dying the same way as the British one. That's my point. But like the French are suffering as well from importing cultures that aren't of their culture. And there is a discussion to be had about empire and colonialism. Like, it's not that I don't think, like, I still think that too. Like, I grew up thinking that, and I still think this leftist perspective that it's like, not comeuppance, but like, yeah, what do you, like, you've entwined yourself in a complicated dance now forever because you colonized a place. And now, because of that, you're going to have politicians that make the argument that all Algerians are French and that they should just come to France. And the benefit of that, at least, is that because they are, quote, French, they actually do assimilate a little better than Pakistanis do in the UK. But suffice to say, like, I don't support empire because I don't think that places around the whole globe are the same. Like, as a traveler, I know that I go to different places and they feel different for a reason, and that's actually good. I actually value that they're different. I don't want every place to be the same. So even though I might like sitting in a cafe and beholding a nice urban landscape in a similar chair everywhere, I would rather all those places be distinct when I visit them. So anyway, that's that point. So anyway, this is insane, and I just thought I would show it to you to show you that, like, the UK really... Okay, here's another one of the...
In my own country it's happening as well. Hey, you stood there smiling. Mohammed and Muslims are nothing but evil ideologies. It is evil. Then what are you doing here? What are you doing to me? I have the right. That's not racist.
Resisting. Stop it.
Yes, Mohammed.
We're all right here, man. Don't worry about us.
What are you doing? Why are you being so aggressive?
Because he's such a hateful
What,
guy.
you just slammed me into a fucking door? Oh, mate, what the fuck? Have a nice afternoon. How is it racial?
Because you call Mohammed a rapist and a killer.
Yes, because he is. Have you read the Quran? Have you read the Quran? Have you ever read the Quran? Because it shows you in the Quran. Oh, mate, what the fuck? Have a nice afternoon. How is it racial?
Because you call Mohammed a rapist and a killer.
Yes, because he is. Have you read the Quran? Have you read the Quran? Have you ever read the Quran? Because it shows you in the Quran, doesn't it? That's not I'm speaking facts.
You shouldn't have anything legal.
No, everything I have is legal. Everything I have is legal.
What's he done?
Nothing.
Terrible translations. You have free speech unless it's politically incorrect. They used to rail on Russia for this very behavior. Now, who is the oppressor? Should Britain be invaded now to free their people? Globalism is the absurd belief that Muslims in Morocco who saw off heads and the liberal Scandinavia backpackers to whom those heads formerly belonged share some sort of universal value system that will allow them to unite under a single system of governance. I mean, this is more like boomer level memeing. It's a little silly. Morocco is not that backward at this point, but yeah, they're not. I don't think Morocco has sawed off a head recently. So it's a bit extreme. Okay. 6 years ago. 8 years ago. 2 Scandinavian tourists, oh, it was that exact case again, were murdered by ISIS-affiliated extremists. Yeah, but the government officially ended executions centuries ago. The last state-ordered executions in Morocco were carried out by firing squad in 93. That's pretty recent. Firing squad? So, yeah, that is based on a truth, actually. I thought that was, like, exaggerating. At the very least, with that one, I would say at least that the killers were persecuted, which is something. You won't get that in Pakistan. All right, back to our infographic. That was a bit of a tangent. But all this to validate the point that victims are disbelieved, blamed, and criminalized in the UK, and I've seen evidence of it, and I've just shown you some of it. The result, thousands of children were left defenseless while gangs operated with impunity. Vulnerable girls were failed by every institution that was supposed to protect them. All right. I think I will actually start reading a little bit of the report now. Do I dare? This first one is really bad, but it's really long. I'll skip Chloe, and I'll read. Do you know how many men abused you over that period if you had to guess? Hundreds, hundreds, and hundreds, and hundreds. This is one victim raped by hundreds and hundreds of men over the span of like 6 years. And how old was Chloe? I guess I want to give you her age. Actually, let's do a summary of victims. This is the actual website. I guess there's no here's one. Let's watch this one together.
Welcome back to Katie Pavlich Tonight. Well, for years, many Western nations have allowed millions of third world immigrants to cross their borders, including many who have no interest in assimilating into Western culture. They bring their own set of beliefs with no regard for the rule of law in their new homeland. We see this every day in America, and DHS is working hard to capture the worst of the worst, like sex traffickers, child molesters, murderers, and more.
I want to pause there because I know that a lot of you will think like right away, like, why am I watching this kind of like glossy Fox News looking report? And like right away she said some things that maybe some of you find objectionable. And I'm just going to keep playing it because I think that the framing of it might feel uncomfortable because it is. But I think it's like definitely true what she just said. Let's listen to it again. Now, I think a lot of people like play this straw man of like, well, not all people that come, like, yeah, no shit. No one said every person that comes here is a criminal, except for the fact that entering a border illegally is a criminal offense. That aside, no one is saying that everyone is a rapist. Even Donald Trump in his famous thing, they're not saying they're best, they're rapists. some of them are good people. Like, nothing in his verbiage said that everybody here is a rapist, okay? But then, like, the left just, like, takes that as, like, a talking point. Like, oh, he said everybody, and it's not true. And that's our talking point. It's not true that everybody... Yeah, you're straw-manning him. Steel man your opponent. What is the strongest version of what he said, and debate that? The strongest thing that he said is that some amount of people that come into the country are going to commit violent crime. How much of that do you accept? If you are a leftist who believes in free movement and immigration, you have to make an argument for that. You have to say, yes, just like with traffic deaths, we have to accept some amount of XYZ, right? Like, that's the argument. Not, Trump is a racist. He just said that everybody that comes here is a racist. No, that's not what happened. And let's, like, grow up your argument a little bit.
Welcome back to Katie Pavlich Tonight. Well, for years, many Western nations have allowed millions of third world immigrants to cross their borders, including many who have no interest in assimilating into Western culture.
Including. So out of the millions being let in, there's a subset of that who have no interest in assimilating, which is true.
Sure. They bring their own set of beliefs with no regard for the rule of law in their new homeland. We see this every day.
And that's, like, on one hand, as I can speak personally, like when I went to Berlin with jaywalking again, like, Germans are very considerate to a fault of, like, obeying a traffic sign. Oh, we can't cross yet. The sign is red, even though there's no cars in sight and it's 2 a.m. We can't cross. Like, are you kidding me? Coming from New York, I will walk in front of a car against a red light because I feel like I can, okay? So it's like a huge culture clash, New York to Berlin, in terms of pedestrian right-of-way. And it's something that I never fully wanted to assimilate into, this kind of, you know, automaton, be a good, you know, obedient citizen and follow our strict red light, green light symbols. Like, I didn't want to go into that, right? And so in a way, how German was I? Because I didn't agree with this policy. I was bringing my own belief system to the country. And that's maybe not cool to do. And a lot of my friends would tell me, like, if you're going to live in Germany, maybe you should learn German, appreciate German customs and values, take your shoes off when you enter the house, yada yada. And that's true. It's like a valid point. And for me, as a visitor, as an immigrant, as an expat, I have to decide, like, am I going to honor my hosts and respectfully be here or not? And that's the debate. Like, it's one thing if people don't want to assimilate. That's one thing. It's another thing what the country does about it. And the problem that I have is this, let's look at the other way. Let's just be nice. They can have their own set of laws. Let them have Sharia. That's the problem.
Today in America, and DHS is working hard to capture the worst of the worst, like sex traffickers, child molesters, murderers, and more. But these same types of people have infiltrated the United Kingdom, making this an important warning to everyone across the pond. A recent report by a member of parliament called the Rape Gang Inquiry exposes grooming gangs and the sexual exploitation of young British girls, mainly by Muslim Pakistani men. The report tells the story of girls who were pumped with alcohol and drugs, repeatedly raped, trafficked, and tortured. It claims those in charge allowed these gangs to operate for allegedly several decades because it was deemed racist to call them out.
I want to add to this as she shows all these profile pictures, which I kind of think is good. I just was like watching some Reddit threads on this topic of race. All of these people would be qualified as white in American Census Bureau data collection. And I don't know how I feel about that. I have to struggle myself with whether or not I'm white. Like, what does it mean to be white? Like, obviously, if your ancestors are from the UK or Germany, you're white. It's, like, obvious. But if you're from Bulgaria, it's harder to say, right? are Slavic people white? Well, certainly people from Russia and Belarus and Ukraine have white skin, but it's hard to say that they're the same as French people, because they're not the same at all. They have totally different histories. They behave differently when they immigrate to places. So this word white is not very helpful, right? But it's funny, like, this racist attitude that I find on the left of, like, black and brown people versus white people. And those are the same people like my dad or Ben who will be like, white people are just as bad. Well, yeah, it's easy to say that when you have census data classifying people from India and from Saudi Arabia as white, and then those people commit crimes, and then you look at the statistics for crimes and it says that the perpetrators are white. Like, look how helpful this was. Not helpful at all, okay? So it's like undermining a few things, right? Like, this is not what we think of as white, but our own Census Bureau does classify Middle Easterners and Indians maybe as whites, which is insane, but it is what it is. I mean, my ancestry is Armenian, which is the Caucasus, so it's Caucasian, but plenty of people will tell me that I'm not white because I'm half Armenian. I'm also half Korean, so I'm half Asian for sure. But, like, what is Armenian? It's not clear, right?
The report estimates that the number of victims could be as high as 250,000 young girls. Now, one of those survivors is calling for accountability and looking to make a change so no survivor ever feels silence again, and to prevent future victims. Earlier, I got to speak with Sammy Woodhouse about her experience and her role in helping oversee the rape gang inquiry.
I've never seen this person talk.
Thank you so much for being here today, Samantha. It's great to see you. So we're going to get into some of the details of this horrific report, but you, of course, brought it to fruition, did a lot of the work on it because you unfortunately have experience of many of the victims in the report. Can you tell us about how you were groomed at age 14 and how it started?
Yeah, of course. So I met Arshad Hussain just after my 14th birthday on my local shop. He was 24 years old. He was known to police and social care at that time for being a very dangerous man. I wasn't the first child he exploited, and I certainly weren't the last. But I was abused for 2 years, mentally, sexually, and physically. I was also exploited to commit crime as well. I was missing from home for days, weeks, and months at a time, and I missed out on a lot of my education as well. I became pregnant twice, first when I was 14, and I was forced to have an abortion, but I was allowed to keep my second child. And I gave birth to him just after my 16th birthday. But within those 2 years, I was beaten, I was raped, I was abducted, and unfortunately, I saw a lot of professionals do a lot of bad things. You know, these were people that were paid to protect me and other children. They didn't. I saw police officers pass on information. They bought drugs from him. A Labour politician called Jahangir Akhtar was also related to him, and a police officer called PC Hassan Ali made a no prosecution deal with him. And what that meant was, on an occasion when I was abducted, they said to him, if you hand Sammy over at a petrol station, we will allow you to walk free. And that's exactly what happened. And that's how I actually exposed the Rotherham child abuse scandal. I named that Labour politician, the police officer, and the rapist involved. It commissioned a report called the Alexis J report, which showed that there was 1,400 children just like myself that was groomed, abused, raped, tortured, trafficked, criminalised, impregnated, murdered, and that the professionals turned a blind eye because majority of the offenders were Pakistani Muslim men. But it also opened the criminal investigation, which led to my rapist being put to jail for 35 years, which is now known as the biggest investigation in our British history. But that's where my activism started. I've been an activist now for 14 years. Raising awareness, changing policy, laws, securing funding for victims. And that's how I met Rupert Lowe and worked on the inquiry.
Right. So there's been a number of these horrific incidents. There is the report that is most recent is the Rape Gang Inquiry Report, which you were instrumental in getting the inquiry off the ground, getting it into the hands of MP Rupert Lowe, who helped to get it publicized. It's now been translated into a number of different European languages.
So I feel like very emotional seeing this person talking because her name was changed in the book or the report, so I don't know which story was hers exactly, but I presume that's the case. But just putting a face to the stories that I read is so impactful and sad and shaking, because it's just wild what's being described in these stories, and to hear her speak so lucidly, it's a little weird because she's clearly like practiced in having to talk about this, and there probably must be some level of detachment. She certainly doesn't want to reconnect emotionally to this time in her life every time she appears in public, though I would prefer if she did at least once. She has like a matter-of-factness about the way she talks about all this, so there's like some cynicism in me that thinks that this is like very trained. But be that as it may, I mean, if you're going to step up as a survivor and you're going to speak out as a public face of this, you're going to be trained by media, obviously. But it's wild because, she is like a millennial, she looks like a millennial, and so that puts her in my generation and like somebody that I could meet. And to just think that she's gone through all this, like, this is the other thing that I haven't really talked about, is that like I know victims of sexual abuse, and I've loved them. I've dated women who were abused, and I just feel very close to this topic. And it's just like the actual crimes are one thing. It's like that happened and it's awful, and it's like that's the easy part to recognize. But like, what do you do after that, right? Like, the personal recovery is one thing. Like, that's already fucking hard for people to get their lives in order and to just have a sense of like normalcy and balance again. But then like, how do you seek justice? Like, I care about justice so much. I care about it immensely, and it's just unjust for criminals like this to throw their will around the world. And 30 years is not enough of a punishment in a British penitentiary for somebody like this, in my opinion. And it's just not fair. Like, the amount, like 30 years for all those guys with those pictures, and I bet that the average punishment is more lenient than 30 years in prison for all those guys. Like, I would deport all of them, or even kill all of them. Like, I can sympathize with that sentiment, and I don't really know why that's not on the table, honestly. Like, I used to be so against the death penalty, and now it's like, I look back on my college essays where I would argue against the death penalty for a myriad of reasons, but the moral reason was the biggest. I mean, obviously the death penalty is not always portioned out properly, so you don't always get the right people. There's like a lot of problems with enacting a death penalty on a state level. But the moral argument that it's wrong to kill, I don't agree with that anymore. I think it's justifiable to kill things sometimes. Like, I don't have this sanctity of life belief anymore. I have a belief in the flourishing of civilization and individual lives within a society, and even outside of a society. I believe in flourishing, but I don't think a maniac wielding a machete or a machine gun is a flourishing life. I think that's a destructive force, and it should be snuffed out and removed from society in any way, really. I don't think that a zombie has a right to live. I don't believe that a fruit fly has a right to life. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that a parasite has a right to life. So I used to think that like it was just wrong for the state to kill, but now it's like, if you rape 30 girls with a knife and force them into child marriage at age 12, I don't care if you die. I don't care about that. And maybe that puts me more on a conservative bent, but like, I don't know why you would want to defend somebody like that. Like, what is the, like, you are fetishizing this aspect that life has inherent value, and that's just wrong. It's just not true, you know? Like, I think after you've lived long enough in this world and you've watched enough death, especially like even like your own grandparents, you know, there's a point of diminishing returns with life. If you're bedridden as a vegetable for months and it costs you money every day to still be pumped full of drugs that keep your heart beating with zero brain activity, there's reasons why people sign away their lives and say, do not resuscitate, do not keep me living as a vegetable, because there's no value to that life anymore. You know, if you're 100 years old and you have to pay $1,000 every day to remain alive, and the best case scenario is that you might get brain activity again, why would you want to be living? None of us would want that. None of us would want that. So to me, it's like, what do you mean there's a natural an inherent value to life? It's just not true. There's an inherent potential to a human life, and that potential changes over time. A 10-year-old's potential born into a good, stable home is much greater than a 60-year-old's potential of a lonely guy that's lived heartache and is now kind of working some dead-end job. You know what I mean? Like, those are two different values of life. And we all instinctively know that. We all want to protect children and women more than certain men. We all know that. It's obvious. I put so much more value on this young woman, and this woman too, for what she's doing, than all of those men put together.
Just so people understand the gravity of it. It alleges that 250,000 young British working class girls were sexually abused, groomed, trafficked by, as you said, Muslim Pakistani men who were allowed into the country going back to the 1950s. So tell us about this inquiry and where it goes from here, because this has happened before, and it, as you just explained, blind eye was turned by the police, by people in power, by elected officials, and now we are here with this horrendous report that, when you read through the details, it's a complete betrayal of the British people and their daughters by the government.
It is, absolutely. Now, this inquiry is the first of its kind in regards to it being a public-funded inquiry. So MP Rupert Law set up this inquiry because the government refused to. You know, we had people such as Elon Musk highlighting this. So Rupert set up the inquiry, 20,000 people within our country donated and made sure this inquiry could happen. I think we're now on we've raised about £700,000. We had 2 weeks hearings in London where we saw survivors, family members and whistleblowers testify. Our report has just been published. We've already opened criminal investigations because of our inquiry. We've also started legal action against dozens of services such as the police forces and the council to ensure that victims get compensated because their life has just been absolutely destroyed. And we're going to go on, or at least Rupert is, he's going to use his parliamentary privilege to name people involved and bring private prosecutions. So our work is far from over. We've got a lot to do, but we're very determined to keep pushing forward. And no doubt our government will make this very difficult for us.
The report found 250,000 victims. How did you get to that number?
Well, that would be a very low number, in my opinion. Now, I don't know if you're aware of a solicitor called David Greenwood. He was actually my solicitor, but he released a dossier saying that 72,000 cases just in Bradford alone. So, unfortunately, we'll never know the true number because our government haven't been keeping the data. They've not even been collecting the data of, the race and the religion of perpetrators. So what we've done is we've looked at the data throughout different towns, and that's how we've been able to come up with the estimate. But as I say, in my opinion, there will be a lot more victims. Now, what you've got to remember, when those reports have been coming out, such as the Alexis J report, they've only been going back to like the 1990s. We've gone back to 1950s. So can you imagine the absolute scale of what's been happening?
Well, the inquiry report is available for everybody to read themselves, and everybody should, to see what has happened. And we look forward to seeing what happens in the future. Thank you, Sammy Woodhouse, for being here tonight and discussing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Honourable Lady for the question? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Honourable Lady for the question? Tuesday marked 1 year since the...
I'm wanting to find Rupert Lowe speaking to Parliament because I did see... I also watched him on Joe Rogan. What are these Facebook pages coming up? Why is it all Facebook?
Well, let's talk now about this rape gang inquiry that has been published. Rupert Lowe raised £600,000 from a crowdfunder and put together a very comprehensive inquiry, actually. The evidence found how in the inquiries view police discouraged victims, destroyed evidence, and in some cases were active members of networks when it came to rape gangs. Social care placed children into homes that became hubs for traffickers. The NHS failed to act on obvious signs of sexual abuse and even sent children back to their abusers. Schools ignored clear safeguarding concerns and instead punished and excluded victims. We have found, the press release says, evidence that the same unspeakable crimes occurred in at least 149 local authority districts, close to 40% of all such districts across the United Kingdom. Rupert Lowe has put out a little video about this. Let's have a bit of a look at some of it now.
We're also intent on naming those people in Parliament, where we're not going to prejudice a legal case, so that everybody knows those people who are responsible, who should have dealt with this but failed to deal with it. So it's been a long, hard, arduous 16 months, and I want to thank everybody, and I hope that every member of the British public has the time to read this. It's not straightforward. It will take time, but it needs to be understood and it needs to be dealt with, and dealt with now.
Just to say, in a few minutes' time, we will be speaking to Marlon West, who's the father of a rape gang abuse victim who's involved in this inquiry. I have read as much of the findings as I have had time to do today. It really is pretty shocking, and the inquiry says their view is that a new Childhood Sexual Exploitation Act must be passed, creating for the first time a specific criminal offence of organised group-based child sexual exploitation with mandatory minimum sentences. Sebastian, what did you make of this?
I don't understand why this is happening. I think initially it was politically a good piece of communications, because the
inquiry itself.
This inquiry, because the government was dragging its heels on an inquiry, which it shouldn't have done. That was a mistake. Eventually it relented and there was an inquiry. Good decision, statutory inquiry. It has the powers to change the law to compel people to do things. This is non-statutory, and so it's a communications exercise. And after
it's more than that, surely.
Well,
you're hearing a lot of information, a lot of evidence from people. It's happening a lot faster than heels are still being dragged on that statutory inquiry, and there is a lack of confidence in statutory inquiries for many people who say, lessons will be learned. People are still waiting for compensation on infected blood, for example.
Sure. But look, if an inquiry is not statutory, what is the point of it?
I think there is a point in inquiries that aren't statutory. So in your view, are you then saying that the rape gang inquiry has no point?
I think
I've heard this argument before. I saw another person on Twitter talking about how, undermining the report by saying that it got some like technical details wrong, some technicalities, and was dismissing it on these technicalities and laughing at it. And I just thought it was so pathetic, this sort of who do you ever know? In our lives, let's say you and I have a mutual friend and we're catching up, and I'm telling you about, if Rob calls me, he's like, how's David doing? I'm like, oh, David's doing great. He's in Philly now. Rob's not going to be like, do you have proof? How do I know that he's in Philly? Well, I just told you. That's kind of how life goes, why would I be making that up? And this whole legal level of analysis, well, we can't really accept that because it wasn't that evidence wasn't accumulated in the most technically correct way, therefore we can't accept it, we have to dismiss it. It's what they're saying, there was a lot of documentation in the report that a lot of police efforts were to bury these crimes and to not report them and underreport them and obfuscate them and not collect all the details. And so how do we know that 87% of the men were Muslim Pakistani? Well, it's because it's not that hard to just dig and be like, oh, who was the perpetrator? Oh, that guy. Oh, what was his name? Oh, that. Oh, let's look him up. Oh, he lived in this town. Oh, yeah, he's Muslim Pakistani. Even though the crime report doesn't say that, you can kind of piece it together, right? If Rob is like, oh, is David still in academia? And I might say no, he's actually studying nursing. Oh, why is that? Well, I don't technically know, but obviously if he's no longer in academia and he's studying nursing, then he must not have been as fulfilled as a professor as he thought he could be, because now he's changing career paths. So there's plenty to infer from that with common sense. I don't need to literally have David swear under oath about that. You know what I mean? This is such a stupid technicality that this guy is pulling. Oh, this isn't statutory, therefore what's the point of this report? Well, the report has done a lot of its own research to put together what everybody already knows and suspects from real victims with real wounds, with real human stories. I'm not one to believe all women. I know that there are plenty of women who are accusing Stanford lacrosse teams of gang rape, and it's not even true. I know that there are plenty of accusations out there that are unfounded just to get back at their ex-boyfriends or their dads. I know that that's true. But when a case is real, I fucking care about it. And that's what makes these false allegations against Trevor Bauer or whomever so horrific. It's you cannot play with fire like that. It's wrong to do that. So there are plenty of women in this kind of space that are also bad actors, but true victims are victims, and to demand every level of technical procedure in order to get their day in court, their justice, is laughable to me. What is this guy doing as a tactic? This interviewer has you on and this is what you're saying.
This one lost its relevance when the government's statutory inquiry was launched. There's no point having two parallel inquiries, one run by the government, the other run by a backbench MP.
Who among us accepts the 9/11 Commission report at full face value? You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to be confused what happened to Building 7, or who funded this terrorist attack. Those things matter, and they were left out of the 9/11, the official report on 9/11, 2001. They are officially left out. So just because a government does something doesn't mean that it has all of the gravitas and full official weight of it. That's an appeal to credentialism, I guess would be the word, right? Like, or the elite, right? Like, you have like all these systems of like validation, like going to these accredited schools, having these kind of diplomas, these honors and accolades. There are people that, you know, have the fancy badge, the name tag, the resume, because you and I know what the New York Times is, or, you know, what the BBC is. So if they write for those companies, or if they're on camera for those companies, they have this weight to them. Talk TV, I've never heard of Talk TV, but I like this guy. You know, he has 1.4 million subscribers, so he's not nobody the way I might be nobody. But even for me, like, I validate myself because of the value of my words, right? I'm not hiding behind credentialism with some branding, or even with popularity with numbers. I'm just standing by what I actually say, the way that I'm thinking. I'm trying to demonstrate a clear thinking process, and that stands on its own. Whereas this guy is doing the opposite. He's saying, no, why would we listen to this process when it's not validated by the government?
Even parallel, are they? Because the Rape Gang inquiry report is now over, it's reported, and the government's statutory inquiry, years on from when people have been calling for it, Labour had to do a U-turn to actually go for it and vote for it. Many people voted against it. I mean, this has almost completed its work, or certainly completed the inquiry level before the statutory inquiry, the government inquiry, has actually started.
That is the nature of a government inquiry. It's going to be slow because it has to be detailed and it has to get worthy outcomes. Look, I'm sure this is an excellent piece of work. I've only looked at the executive summary, but I'm concerned about the people behind it.
About the people behind it. So he's obviously against the political goals of Rupert Lowe. But he read the executive summary, so why don't we read the executive summary? The Rape Gang inquiry examined the systematic targeting of vulnerable girls, overwhelmingly white British, by predominantly Muslim Pakistani gangs across towns and cities throughout the United Kingdom. Now, I like the language that this is already using. I like the directness, and I don't even mind the casting of it. And a lot of people nowadays will lambaste my dog. A lot of people will like criticize the fact that like a story like the Little Mermaid takes place in Norway, right, or in Denmark rather. So those are two white characters. Like, why do they have to be white? Well, I guess they don't have to be. They just are. That's, you know, how the story was written. So certain fables come out of certain parts of the world for certain reasons. You can recast those if you want, but to me, it matters that the victims were vulnerable white British girls and the perpetrators were predominantly Muslim Pakistani gangs. Like, you could flip that if you want. It would still be a horrific story, right? I mean, we've heard these stories of maybe not to this level, but certainly like you could imagine the evil white British Empire showing up in India and raping the land. I mean, definitely the Japanese did that in China. That was like a tactic for them for sure. But like, it matters what actually happened, right? I mean, that it matters. So like to frame it in this exact way, that is a story. The story is that we've imported immigration that does this. That is the story. So maybe you guys kick back against that. Maybe that's what this guy is complaining about as well. But to me, like, that framing is valid because that is the truth of the matter. The evidence put to the inquiry confirms that this scandal constitutes one of the most horrendous failures in the history of the country. Organized networks of perpetrators built coordinated operations that transported victims between locations, supplied them with drugs and alcohol, recorded abuse for distribution and blackmail, and passed girls between multiple adult men. These crimes have been committed for decades, since the 1950s, by Pakistanis in particular, and have affected every region of our nation. The scale of the crimes committed is staggering. It has been previously estimated that at the very least 250,000 young white girls have been subjected to repeated rape, gang rape, trafficking, torture, pregnancy, forced Islamic conversion, and lifelong trauma. The true number is probably higher. The perpetrators bear primary responsibility, yet the institutional failures that enabled them for decades must also be confronted. In court records and official inquiries, around 87% of those convicted in these group-based child sexual exploitation (CSE) cases bore distinctively Muslim names. The vast majority of men involved in these gangs were not convicted. Dr. Taj Hargay, an imam with the Oxford Islamic congregation, believes the true proportion of gang members who are Muslims to be around 95%. This figure far exceeds the Muslim share of the overall United Kingdom population. The overwhelming majority of the rape gang networks consisted entirely of men from Muslim backgrounds, predominantly of Pakistani heritage, although smaller groups from Somali, Iranian, Syrian, Turkish, and other Muslim origins were also involved. The inquiry heard harrowing testimony from survivors and their families. The method used to groom children typically followed the same process. Girls as young as 11 were initially befriended by a young Muslim man who then treated the young child like an adult and would then start providing them with alcohol, drugs, and cigarettes. After a few months, the girls would then be collected from school gates, care homes, and streets in taxis. They were taken to houses, flats, restaurants, and hotels where they were raped repeatedly by groups of men, tortured, filmed for blackmail, and told they were white trash or kuffar who merited punishment. Many became pregnant while still children. Some miscarried under trauma. Others endured coerced abortions, and some gave birth to children who were later removed by the state. We found that the same unspeakable crimes occurred in at least 149 local authority districts. Close to 40% of all such districts across the UK. Survivors described daily rapes, red rooms of extreme torture, trafficking between cities, and institutional disbelief that compounded their suffering. Some girls were even trafficked to the Middle East, where they would endure Islamic marriage. It's wild to read this again and to know all the details of each statement, because these are big statements, right? To just think about one of the stories that I read of one girl going to Iraq, I think, with her rapist, her baby daddy rapist, and talking about how she doesn't even get to see this child anymore during Christmas time, and that they're just now in Iraq and gone, just the ones, it's like I don't know, it's a human condition that we suffer with, that a one single story is almost more meaningful and impactful, and then when you extrapolate thousands from it, it's almost you kill one person, you're a murderer. You kill 10 people, you're a serial killer, and then you kill 1 million people and you're a hero, or a president or a dictator or something, right? So it's reading this abstract, it almost doesn't even give the whole picture, even though it's trying to. The demographic and cultural drivers are clear. Perpetrators from Pakistani and Muslim and other backgrounds operated under an honor and shame-based clan code that treated non-Muslim girls, especially white working-class girls, as property available for sexual use. This pattern was reinforced by 8 theological and legal aspects of Islam. These include the doctrine of Muslim superiority drawn from Quranic verses that position Muslims at the top with a duty to correct non-believers. The gang members' justification for their crimes can be found in the Islamic principles of loyalty and disavowal, known as al-wala wa la-bara. It demands enmity towards non-Muslims, the superiority of men over women, forced marriage combined with the absence of any fixed minimum age of consent, the perception of female sexuality as inherently dangerous, a system of sex slavery that authorizes sexual relations with non-Muslim captives, and a religiously sanctioned social hierarchy that subjugates conquered non-Muslims. These elements, filtered through clannish immigrant subcultures, provided religious justification that enabled the systemic rape and even slaughter of white British girls. Definitely some suicides in here, and a lot of attempted suicides. I want to talk about religion for a little bit. And I might end my stream with this comment. So I feel a little betrayed by a lot of my friends and family on this topic of being anti-religion. I'm an atheist. I've identified as an atheist for probably 10 years now. And before that, I just identified as nothing or agnostic. And I went through this period. Did I say 10 years? I guess I should say 20 years. I mean, I came of age with Sam Harris's book, The End of Faith, and Christopher Hitchens' book, God is Not Great. And these books meant a lot to me because they put a point to something I was feeling for a long time, which was that superstitions were silly and that dogma was evil. And I separate those two things. The third thing is spirituality, which I think is good. But, like, religion combines all of these things. Dogma refers to a principal tenet or system of beliefs laid down by an authority as incontrovertibly true. It demands acceptance without question and serves as a core foundation for an ideology, philosophy, or religion. So I abhor dogma. This is also why I'm anti-woke, because woke ideologues will say something that, like, being white is inherently a original sin, like inherently evil. Whiteness, all white people are racist, or we all live in a patriarchal society that is evil. Like, these are just dogmas. These are dogmatic statements that I don't agree with. Like, I've asked my friends, prove that we're in a patriarchy. How do you prove that? And people get very mad at me. They're like, what do you mean? It's just obvious. How do I even talk to you if you don't accept that we live in a patriarchy? So I find it really hard to talk to religious people. And I think that a lot of my, quote, irreligious friends are religious, but that their religion is woke politics. And I feel betrayed by them because I think that when we came of age, we all kind of agreed that religion was stupid. And I think that most people, when they say that religion is stupid, they're focusing on the superstition stuff, the supernatural, right? Like ascending to heaven after being dead for 3 days, or, you know, God made Eve out of Adam's rib bone, or, you know, these kind of silly things, right, that like don't make any sense, that Jesus was born of a virgin, that Mary never had sex, and then suddenly God impregnated her, you know, like these kind of like silly myths, right? Scientology is like really mockable in this way. You know, the Thetans and the alien spaceships and stuff that we are going to ascend to when we die. Like, it's all really like silly, and it's cool if it's like science fiction, like in a movie, but like if you take it really seriously, it's like cringe. And so I think everyone I know basically agrees with that. But then like I do know some religious people too, and they'll for sure like reference the spiritual side. There's a fourth side, which is like the community and the structure for a way of life, and that's also probably good. I appreciate that the older I get, even though it's not for me. Like, if I had kids, maybe I would send them to Catholic school. I wouldn't fully rule it out. It wouldn't be my first choice, but like I could see the benefits of it in some way, especially if the education quality was stronger, of course. But like, there's a value to having a code, a way of life, and that everybody buys into it. And I think that as we've killed God as a society, that God is dead and we've killed him, as Nietzsche said, that the problem is that we have this power vacuum that people don't really know what to believe in. And then these politics like Marxism and woke ideologies come around, and then people kind of dedicate their lives to that, or veganism, or astrology, you know, like whatever random hobby is now suddenly people's religion because they don't really have anything else to believe in. And so people do need to believe in things, but I don't think dogma is the answer of what to believe in. I think it's actually quite sinister to have dogmatic beliefs, and I just have always thought that it was easy to apply that to Christianity coming from the USA, but I just went further and applied that also to Islam, and it turns out that Islam is just full of terrible, terrible beliefs, both superstitions but especially dogmatic values, and I find them really abhorrent, and they're evinced nowadays in our modern societies, and it's disgusting. It's disgusting. So that's how I feel about it. I'm gonna read this short one, Fiona. I'll read you this one testimony, and then I'll probably stop. All right. Fiona grew up in a highly abusive household marked by domestic violence, severe emotional abuse, and repeated suicide attempts by her mother, which Fiona witnessed. Despite exceptional academic ability, she developed serious mental health difficulties, self-harm behaviors, and suicidal ideation from a young age. Now, right away, there's plenty of finger pointing at white people, right? Like, broken home, bad upbringing, those are white parents. So like all you race hustler types who like are full of white guilt, like, yes, would any of this have even happened if the white people weren't such shitty parents, right? I mean, I couldn't disagree with that. Like, it's fair. Like, this girl right here was let down immediately by white people, her parents, and it's really sad. After escalating abuse and failed disclosures, Fiona entered care at the age of 13. She was placed in a children's home that had already been identified as high risk for sexual exploitation in a television documentary prior to her arrival. Inadequate supervision meant she went missing repeatedly. At 13, she was groomed by adult Pakistani men whom she estimates were aged between 24 and 45. The grooming began with affection and alcohol, quickly progressing to rape, drug dependency, threats, and trafficking. Care staff negligence was extreme. Abusers would sit in cars outside waiting for the girls, openly converse with staff, and even phone the home to inquire about them. One care worker told Fiona's mother that her boss had described recording the men's car registration plates as above her pay grade, warning that she would lose her job if she did so. Fiona believes the staff were aware of what was happening but felt powerless to stop it, rather than being actively complicit. Nevertheless, the children's home received £5,000 per week to care for her and failed miserably. Fiona suspects the management avoided proper investigation for fear of being labeled racist. Only the police took any formal action, issuing harboring notices to the men, official warnings stating they had no permission to associate with, contact, or house a vulnerable child. That's good. However, no further action was followed. When Fiona's mother called the police to report her daughter missing and mentioned a history of abuse by Asian men, the call handler told her, "You can't describe them as Asian men because that's racist. You should just be glad your child is being taught a different culture." On one occasion, a police officer returned Fiona to the house where the abuse was occurring and told the men to have fun with her. On another occasion, police instructed... She's 13, by the way. On another occasion, police instructed the abusers that if they could persuade Fiona to sign herself out of care, the police would stop bothering them. The gang tried to convince her to do so, intending to traffic her to Kashmir. That's in India-Pakistan border. She was only prevented from leaving the country because she did not have a passport. Between 2008 and 2012, Fiona was repeatedly raped by multiple men connected to organized grooming networks. She was often kept in a house, known as a party house, where between 10 and 20 men would attend at one time. On one occasion, she was encouraged to bring her friends because the owner had relatives visiting from Birmingham to celebrate Eid and expected girls to be there. That's an Indian or Pakistani holiday. Within the house, the girls were routinely referred to as white slags, while the men wanted Pakistani girls kept pure for marriage. The gangs reportedly discussed fears that the English Defence League would arrive armed, so they kept baseball bats for protection. They also allegedly spoke of attending EDL demonstrations with weapons. Fiona was not only trafficked and raped across multiple cities in the UK, but was also forced to traffic drugs. Drugs, intimidation, and violence were used to control her. So, I want to just take a break here. You know, somehow sex work these days is not criticized very much, but when I was coming up, pornography was like a real target for moral crusaders, and a lot of women, including my friends, like think of prostitution as this evil practice that you must be trafficked into, because why would any woman choose to sell her body to men like that? And that whenever they see pornography, they just see a poor child who must have been abused as a kid and therefore doesn't know how to be loved. And whenever they see this young woman having sex on camera for money, it's just like this abhorrent, disturbing thing. And you know, like I said, I'm a red-blooded man who watches porn. You know, I see this, and it's usually fine because there's so much good amateur porn that's between couples that, like, it's fine. Like, I don't suspect anything shady happening there, except for maybe just this, like, vanity, narcissism, this desire to, like, be seen, you know, this kind of exhibitionism. Whatever, it's fine, you know, I mean, it's a way to make a buck. But sometimes I do see these like casting couches or women that seem a little younger than you would think. Like, you know, like 18 is a funny age, right? 25 even, like the older you get, like everybody kind of looks like a kid in a way. And so it can be a little shocking if you see something that like looks like, wow, that person is really young, and do they even know what they're doing? Do they even want to be there? And we have this like kind of presumed, you know, we've kind of settled on 18 as a country as the age of consent, and the reason we've done that is because it's the oldest age of consent among the states. It's 16 in like Alabama, it's 17 in New York, it might even be 15 somewhere, I don't know, but it's 18 in California, and this is where a lot of the pornography is made. And 18 feels like a fair number to me because clearly 18-year-olds are sexually mature. They have developed all the secondary sex characteristics, they can bear children, and it's really about the mental state, right? We care about that more. Like, we don't want, like, a 15-year-old is often sexually mature as well, but they seem a little too young developmentally in their head, right? Like, do they even know what they're doing? Do they know how to consent? And our laws say no, they don't. And so when I see even like a 20-year-old, you know, like, I don't really, I have like a paternal instinct to protect that person more often than I have a sexual signaling to engage with them, right? It's like there's a line, right, that everybody has where it's like it's hard to describe it, but I think you know what I'm meaning here. And when I just imagine that, and then I imagine these kind of situations, you know, like this girl is 13 years old and she's being passed around at parties with 20 adult men, and these men called up her foster care home and said, hey, who's there tonight? We're going to come by and get them. And when the parents called that foster home and said, we want to figure out who's taking this person out of the home and raping them, the people working there are like, oh, that's above my pay grade, sorry. Like, it's so insane to imagine this literally going down, and that these men are talking about taking her over to Pakistan. Like, we're taking this girl back to our country now. Oh damn, she doesn't have a passport. And these are gang members. I mean, the rape gang descriptor is like, it's a gang in the sense that it's an operation that's also dealing drugs, that's also like, you know, trafficking with taxis between different districts. So it's not just a group of friends, but on top of that, it's like almost a gang, like literally South Central LA style, with like weapons and like, we're gonna go protest the EDL. Fuck those racist assholes. They're our enemy. Let's go batter some heads now. Like, they're like a legitimate gang. Fiona was not only trafficked and raped across multiple cities in the UK, but was also forced to traffic drugs. Drugs, intimidation, and violence were used to control her. She was made to clean up the knives from the scene of 2 fatal stabbings. 13-year-old. That's middle school. 7th grade. She was present during a shootout. Her abusers bragged to her that they had hidden dead bodies in a certain location. A few days later, Fiona recalls the news reporting on a body being recovered from the same location that the abusers had disclosed to her. As a result, threats of violence carried enormous weight. Right, because now she's like a witness to a crime. And now these guys are telling her like, hey, if you now tell the police, now you're in trouble because you're part of us now. You're part of our gang. At 14, okay, now she's 14. Fiona was abused by a man known as Rambo. He had entered Britain illegally in the back of a lorry. That's a truck. Previously castrated in Pakistan as punishment for child abuse. He had then fled to the Philippines, where he allegedly attacked multiple women and children with a large knife, the origin of his nickname. So this stand-up citizen was castrated by his own people in Pakistan because of being such a psychopath, fled to the Philippines, attacked a bunch of women with knives, and then just got brought into the UK because of this very friendly immigration policy. And like, I hate to be alarmist or anything, and I don't want to generalize, but it's like, of course people like that come to the USA as well. Like, this is who Biden was letting in, not just this person, but like, this is what's so wild to me. Like, when you are so tolerant that you want everybody to come into your country, your city, maybe not your gated community, maybe down the street, you want them all here, and you think it's racist to criticize any of them. What you don't realize is that you are now victimizing innocent people in your own neighborhood. Like, what happens when an illegal immigrant commits a crime against somebody you might know? Like, I don't understand the moral high ground of somebody that wants to allow in everybody without any scrutiny or discrimination at all. And this kind of thing can happen. Rambo was locked in a room with 2 girls and subjected them to extreme sexual torture. This case illustrated that in some instances, the sexual abuse of children was driven more by humiliation and control than by sexual gratification, since he was castrated. So that must have been fun. 14-year-old girl being subjected to that. At 15, Fiona became pregnant while in a mixed-sex care home. Her son was later removed and adopted due to the ongoing exploitation risks. So it was too risky for a baby in this household because even babies could have been sexually exploited. But Fiona gets to stay there. Yet Fiona was left in the same dangerous environment. The abuse continued into her adulthood. So that's 14 to 18 now. It only stopped when she turned 18, leaving her with profound physical and psychological trauma, including PTSD, substance dependency, and long-term health damage. Fiona states that the greatest harm came not only from the abusers, but from institutional disbelief, neglect, and punishment that actively enabled the ongoing exploitation. In total, she estimates she was abused by between 50 and 100 men. Of those, only 2 were not Pakistani. I'll read another one. Michelle. Michelle was physically abused in childhood by both her mother and her stepfather. So here we go again, if you want to blame more white people. Her mother had multiple partners throughout Michelle's childhood, many of whom also abused her, some sexually. She believes this early experience created an association between abuse and love, leaving her particularly vulnerable. From the age of 13, she was groomed by 3 adult Pakistani brothers who supplied her with alcohol, cigarettes, and drugs. She was raped while intoxicated, including one occasion when she was taken upstairs while her sister tried to intervene. Because of her upbringing, she thought this was normal, that they were her boyfriends, and that they loved her. She would go missing for extended periods and was subjected to repeated daily sexual abuse. The perpetrators would collect her from school, her home, and public places, using threats of violence to coerce and control her. At age 14, she was gang raped and beaten by 3 men who had locked her in a house. She was left covered in cuts and bruises, which alerted a friend. The friend told her own mother, who then contacted Michelle's mother. The police were called but they claimed there was little they could do without more evidence. I think that's bullshit. I think they're lying. Police don't need evidence to investigate a crime. They need suspicion. That's all they need. And they can make a wellness check regardless. One of the gang members later forced Michelle to go to the police station with him to retract her statement. The police accepted him as her appropriate adult, a role normally reserved for a parent, close family member, social worker, or trained professional. The investigation was subsequently dropped. So, a 30-year-old Pakistani man shows up to the police station with a 13-year-old white girl. And the girl says, I want to retract what I said about being raped by this gang of guys. Who's this then? And the girl's probably looking scared. And the police are like, yeah, okay, that's your adult. Go home. What the fuck? Like, I don't know what's worse. Like, I'm first picturing a Pakistani police officer or desk worker, and that they're like part of the gang, right? Like back in the KKK days, like the KKK has infiltrated the police force too, like that. But then, like, thinking about that video I showed you of that woman, idiot officer, throwing that guy to the wall, like, I'm just picturing another white woman, idiot, useful idiot, who's like aiding and abetting Pakistani rape gangs and letting her fellow female 13-year-old girl, a child, being abused ad nauseum. One of Michelle's friends who lived in a care home would be collected directly outside by the same gang. Care staff would call the police, but officers reportedly referred to the girls as prostitutes, despite them being children. It gives a taxi driver a bit. Both social services and the police, Michelle says, failed to understand the situation and believed the girls were engaging in the activity by choice. A 13-year-old girl cannot engage in a sexual activity by choice. That's what consent, the age of consent, means. Anything under the age of consent is not consent. Like, what kind of adults are these? Oh, but she wants to be hanging out with those guys? This 13-year-old wants to be hanging out with these guys? I mean, it's funny because, like, here I am, along with you guys, surely, outraged by the system, outraged by the police and the workers in the foster care homes and everyone else involved. But let's not forget that these are grown men, some as old as me in their 40s or 50s, who are pursuing sexually children. And not only are they pursuing them sexually and then fucking them, but they're doing it in the most vile, violent ways you can imagine doing it. Okay? And you want to harp on about Jeffrey Epstein and how evil he was. Jeffrey Epstein was monstrous and a tactician and built this web and, system of getting women to give him massages and blowjobs and to have sex with them. But he was not threatening them to this level. He wasn't ruining their lives to this level. He was like whining and dining them, really. He was like playing fancy pants, get on my private jet, guess who I can introduce you to, I'm going to give you a lot of money, I'm paying you money. He like turned them into prostitutes. They didn't necessarily want to become these high-end escorts. He turned young women, 15, 16, from what I've heard, which is a more appropriate age to be having sex than 13, 14, and that's a major difference, to be clear. He's turning 16-year-olds into escorts, which is bad. But turning 13-year-olds into gang rapist victims is worse. I don't know if I need to debate somebody about this. It's just wild to me that people are like so incensed by Jeffrey Epstein and his whole thing and not even aware of this. And I hope that now that you might be aware of this, that it's outrageous to you. And yes, I'll admit this. I despise Pakistani men more than I despise Jeffrey Epstein. Why? Because Jeffrey Epstein is somehow relatable in that he's an American entrepreneur with certain tastes and standards that I can appreciate a little bit. Not to say that we would go for the same type, though we might. I mean, he's interested in this kind of glamorized, youthful sexiness. And his style is to fly them to an island and enjoy this good life, okay? Like, that is relatable to almost all of us. We like, champagne parties. Everyone I know likes to, like, have hors d'oeuvres and drink champagne by the pool, okay? Like, that is Jeffrey Epstein's style. Everyone I know likes that stuff. Except for maybe my brother. But, like, that's his way. He's also like, he's making a ton of money, which is kind of like impressive in America to like be this kind of successful business person. He's hobnobbing with the most powerful people. And this is not like, a jealousy thing, but it's like there's some respect to going through that level of game, right? He is spitting game. This guy has swagger. He is seducing women into his web of, grossness. He is seducing them effectively with his impressiveness, okay? I respect an American businessman more so doing that than I do Muslim immigrants who are harassing, who first are just getting these girls wasted, right? They're just they're preying on, I mean, the predatory aspect is similar. It's like, who's vulnerable to this? And what's the easiest way to get them on my side? I'm just going to like shower them with, these kind of indulgences like alcohol. I mean, it's not hard to impress a kid with alcohol. But then everything that follows from that, right? As soon as they get a girl to trust them a little bit, then they start telling her what trash she is because she's not Muslim, that she's a disgusting animal. And then they're just abusing her and telling her that she deserves it. And when I say abusing, I mean, it's not like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe Jeffrey Epstein was, I don't know enough about Epstein's sex crimes themselves. From the documentary, it was like coercing, not even coercion. He was paying women and saying like, do you know anyone else that wants to earn some money as a masseuse? I want a massage. Now give me a happy ending. I'll give you $200 more. Bring your friend next time, right? Like, that is so much different than what we're reading here. And I just feel like one is more despicable to me. I'm okay with saying that. Like, I think it's worse to move into a country that you're not from, to think that your religion should take over that country, to systematically get all your buds together, to exploit through almost a jihadist act of, the rape of non-king, to terrorize through sex, to use rape as a weapon, right? To rape all the girls of these guys. We're going to take their women and rape them all. That's worse to me. One of Michelle's friends who lived in a care home would be collected directly outside by the same gang. They failed to understand the situation. Right. Okay. Social services and the police, Michelle says, failed to understand the situation and believed the girls were engaging in the activity by choice. As a result, little was done to intervene. When she was abducted and went missing, no one came looking for her. A social worker once told her that at age 14, she would be allowed to live with her 30-year-old boyfriend as long as they did not share a room. What kind of fucking bureaucrat? Like, I can just so picture this. Like, I hate dealing with admin. Like, you're just, like, in the doctor's office, you know, like, asking, like, these details, or the DMV, like, oh, like, how does this work? Oh, yeah, you can move in with him when you're 14, but you can't share a room. Like, this is, like, the most, like, pencil-pushing, you know, behavior of a person. Like, the Nazis were probably like that, you know? Like, I just hate whenever I see that behavior. Like, who are you? Be a human for what? Like, talk to me. Like, what are you talking about? That? What rules are you upholding? Michelle was raped in bin sheds, threatened with a knife, and forced into sex with multiple men waiting in cars. She was drugged, beaten, burned with cigarettes, locked in rooms, and passed between men. An amusement arcade was used as a front for drug dealing and the sexual exploitation of children. She became pregnant 4 times as a child as a result of rape, leading to miscarriages, 1 abortion, and 1 surviving child. Of her abusers, she states 98% of them were Pakistani Muslim. If not, they were Iraqi Muslim or Kurdish. Michelle believes these gangs have remained untouchable because authorities fear being labeled racist. She describes an extensive network of abusers operating across the entire country, calling it industrial in scale. It functions as a large central network with smaller connected groups in specific localities. Michelle claims she was raped by between 600 and 700 different men over the course of 3 years. She now lives with severe PTSD and lifelong trauma, describing both her childhood and her future as destroyed. God. One more. They're easier when they're short like this. I'm a fan of short chapters in general. The first one is really long. It's really intense and detailed. Whitney. Whitney grew up in a vulnerable household. Her mother suffered from severe mental health issues and her father was absent from her life. She was first groomed and sexually abused at the age of 15. Okay, a little better. Still pedophilia by our accounts, right? She was first groomed and sexually abused at the age of 15 by 2 adult Pakistani brothers. One of the brothers, Whitney recalls, acted as a boyfriend figure. Both brothers would regularly take her to a flat in Birmingham, supply her with alcohol, and in her words, she would have sex with them. Their interactions with Whitney soon turned violent. They began beating her, and on one occasion, held a hot iron to her face. Whitney recalls that the brothers stopped contacting her after they arrived at her house to collect her and found all of her uncles sitting on the wall outside. Okay, some male protection here. After that incident, they never came back. Nice. She cannot remember exactly how or why her uncles were there, but she believes her mother had asked them to intervene. Thank God. Like, after the very first time, do that. Do that right away. Why not? Like, I have like this impulse to try and step up and protect people. Like I want to, like in my relationships, when I'm in a relationship, like with Christine most recently, I felt good with my arm around her walking down the street if there was some crazy guy, right, or some sketchy situation, just knowing that like I have a physical presence between her and whomever else is out there, right? This protective force that I know women value. And so a lot of this is a lacking of that force by these poor girls who are growing up in these broken homes. Broken homes are bad. I mean, it's one of those things in the US that's not really talked about, but so many of the men that are in prison these days are from broken homes. I don't know if that's news to you. Many years later for Whitney, her daughter began self-harming at age 11 and even attempted suicide. Her phone contained sexually explicit messages. So Whitney is now the mom in this story. So she had her own involvement, right? Because this is a decades old situation, okay? So I guess in the 70s or something, Whitney had dealt with this. And now her uncles intervened and stopped it after she had an iron to her face at 15. But she did finally have a child herself, so now we're jumping, I guess, 15 years in time to the 90s. Whitney's daughter began self-harming at age 11 and attempted suicide. Her phone contained sexually explicit messages. Whitney's daughter told her there was a sex room at school run by the older boys. Deeply concerned for her daughter, Whitney contacted social services. They offered little support beyond talking through the problems. In one instance, social services accidentally sent her 6 other children's case files instead of her daughter's, which left her deeply distrustful of their ability to help. Yeah. Classic. Whitney's daughter was coerced into sending a sexual image, which was then circulated across multiple schools, the local community, and eventually the internet. This led to her receiving unwanted attention from adult men of various ethnicities and from multiple countries. From that point on, Whitney's daughter began going missing regularly. These disappearances were directly linked to sexual demands and exploitation by older boys and adult men. She was threatened with violence if she contacted the police and sometimes returned home with items of clothing missing. Whitney repeatedly reported her concerns to the police and social services, clearly stating that she believed her daughter was being sexually exploited. Police responses were often delayed, statements were not taken, and investigations were closed without further action. Social services refused to relocate the family, downgraded the risk level, and eventually closed the case despite ongoing exploitation. Whitney herself was blamed, and her own past was used to undermine her credibility as a parent. Her family received repeated threats, including warnings that their house would be burned down, faces would be slashed, and machetes would be used. Later, Whitney discovered that her daughter had been placed on the National Referral Mechanism as a trafficking victim without her being informed. The NRM is the UK's official framework for identifying, referring, and supporting victims of human trafficking and modern slavery, and serves as a recognition by a designated professional that an individual is a potential victim of human trafficking or modern slavery. How nice. I think I'll stop here for the day, you guys. been a real pleasure. Should we listen to a little more of this?
We've heard the language that Rupert Lowe uses about people from other countries, and it is deplorable. And so it is really hard to escape the reality that this is a man who comes to this with a lot of preconditions.
I think you are almost levelling a charge of dog whistling to this report, actually.
It's not far off,
That's what it sounds like to me, Sebastian, but I would urge you to look beyond that. I, like you, have only read the executive summary coming here today, which is excellent, I think. What I do think this is such a worthwhile piece on, especially given the backdrop of the murder of that 13-month-old child, of the reporting, of the accountability, of the joined-up thinking of the agencies and the coordination of the agencies involved in protecting children. You only have to speak to Maggie Oliver for 10 minutes and you will see a wonderful, wonderful woman. But the overriding issue that she has had was with the reporting of the young girls and with the information that they gave, trusted professionals that didn't go any further. And this report here at the end says that our detailed list of, it's only recommendations because it's not statutory, as we're all very well.
Under your chairmanship. Firstly, I would like to thank the 260,974 British men and women who signed the petition to make this debate possible. And I want to welcome these brave survivors who are sitting behind us in the hall. This debate is about them. As you quite rightly say, it's not about politics. I want the world to hear what we heard during the 2 weeks of our independent rape gang inquiry hearings. An inquiry that should never have needed to happen. I sincerely urge this Parliament to listen to the testimonies from these brave survivors and to act, to finally act. So the first testimony, he took his pants down, penetrated me, had sex with me. He then stopped before ejaculation. He picked up the bottle of Jack Daniels, which was now empty, and he forced it up inside me. He broke the glass while he was there. At that point, I was about 12, nearly 13. Another testimony. I was held down by the men as they each took turns to orally and vaginally rape me, taking it in turns to pin down my arms and my legs. When the assault ended, the men hit me repeatedly, threatened to find me, kill me, and harmed my loved ones if I ever told anybody what had happened. Another. Comments were constantly made suggesting that white girls, the Christian girls, were viewed as having fewer morals or lower values, whereas Muslim girls were described by some of the men as having dignity and higher moral standing. These comparisons were used to justify the way I was treated and to further humiliate and control me. Another. She was a white woman herself, who I imagine may have been groomed, and has obviously now married into the family, shouting obscenities at us. Throughout the whole sentencing, she was constantly saying, "Fucking liars, lying white bitches." She said to me that God will be the witness for what happens to me. Another. Race did play a part and motivated the selection or demographic of the victims. Throughout my exploitation, the other girls I encountered or who were abused alongside me were almost exclusively white. Another, she had a baby by him, and his dad was an imam. His dad knew, and he got his son married and said that he wasn't allowed to see the child. They look after their own community. Another. Over the course of the abuse, I was raped by multiple police officers in different parts of the country. Another, he put a cigarette out on the baby's face. Another, it started when I was 13. I was raped by probably about 600 or 700 different men over 3 years. Another, they would toot the horn of the car and then a child would be taken to the front door by a staff member of the children's home. Another, I was bleeding from both my vagina and my back passage and was so swollen I could not sit down. I told hospital staff my drink had been spiked and I did not know what had happened because I was too afraid to tell the truth. They did not ask any questions. They gave me tablets and discharged me. I was 15 years old. Another, things would escalate around Eid and holidays. Parties got bigger, got worse, got more violent. More people involved, more girls involved. The parties were just bigger. Another, the main clash that I kind of had with the religion side of it was I grew up as a Christian. I would wear my cross because it was something really special to me. It was just used as a way to break me down. They said, "Where is your God now? Has your God forsaken you?" Another, it was all of the white girls in every home that I went to. I remember a man opening the back of a van and I saw 15, 20 girls locked in dog cages. Another, dogs were brought in and I couldn't move at all. I had nowhere to move. I think that was the scariest thing, was not having any concept of it. There were men around me, not horrified, not disgusted, not helping, but filming and laughing, making bets on whether the dog could actually rape me or not. And yes, I was raped by a dog. The man just held my face, stared me down straight in the eyes, and he wanted to see me break, and he did. Another, I just want it to stop and not happen to any other children, and for people to actually act, to do something and stop being so scared. I could continue for hours and hours. All of us in this building have a responsibility to finally act. Not to talk, but to act. Our Rape Gang Inquiry report will be released in the coming days. It will change Britain for good. Thank you.
Steve Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. Almost 500 people in my constituency of Mansfield signed this petition, and many, many more constituents have written to me expressing their great, deep concern about child sexual exploitation, about grooming gangs, and the failure of our institutions to protect vulnerable children in our country. And I understand from them why this issue matters so profoundly to the public and why there is such a strong demand for transparency and accountability and action. Where child sexual exploitation has occurred, including in organised gang-based offending, the failures of our police forces, our councils.
All right, guys. Hope you enjoyed all that. Thanks for hanging out with me. Until next time. Ciao.